My name is Ashley, and at 27, I found myself navigating the dynamics of a family business intertwined with marriage. Growing up, I was the sole focus of my calm, skeptical father and my vivacious, spirited mother. Their union was a harmonious blend of energies, though mom's exuberance could sometimes be overwhelming. When I married son, whom I met through a friend, I hoped for a marriage akin to the vibrant one my parents shared. Son's family owned a renowned French restaurant chain in New York City, contrasting with my family's more modest ventures in the food industry. While dating, son's tales of restaurant life and ambitions were captivating. However, after marriage, I grew weary of the constant comparisons between our family businesses. The discrepancy in our family's businesses became a sore point. Son's family's restaurant empire seemed to overshadow our modest endeavors. Arguments ensued, with son and his family viewing their success as solely their own achievement, ignoring the significant contributions of Todd, son's cousin, who had been taken in by their family after being orphaned. Todd, often referred to as a brother by son but treated more like a servant, played a crucial role in the success of the family business. Yet he was overlooked and underappreciated. My mother-in-law, burdened by the knowledge of Todd's situation, expressed her concerns to me, unable to openly confront her husband and son. Despite their essential roles in the business, Todd and my mother-in-law remained humble and kind. Todd's competence and my mother-in-law's wisdom were evident, yet they were forced to operate under the shadow of son's incompetence and his father's arrogance. Son's ineptitude in managing the business contrasted sharply with Todd's skillful handling of day-to-day operations. Employees respected Todd, often resisting son's unreasonable demands. Behind the scenes, Todd and my mother-in-law worked tirelessly to salvage the business while, during a visit to my hometown, I found myself sharing my marital woes with my parents over a comforting bowl of potato soup. My mother, sipping her soup with gusto, didn't mince words. "Ashley, just get a divorce and come home." My father, though wearing a bitter smile at her bluntness, remained silent. It was too soon to entertain the idea of divorce. After all, we hadn't even been married for 6 months. Disappointed in both Judson, my husband, and my father-in-law, I found solace in the kindness of my mother-in-law and Todd. "I can't just easily get a divorce," I replied with a wry smile, knowing the complexities of my situation. But my mother, undeterred, suggested I leave Judson and join them at their pizza shop. I protested vehemently, while my father, ever the gentle soul, inquired about my troubles. As I poured out my frustrations about Judson's dismissive attitude towards me and his unwarranted suspicions of my relationship with Todd, my mother-in-law shared some revealing insights. She recounted a past incident where Judson, driven by his insecurity and rivalry with Todd, unjustly fired a female employee who had garnered Todd's admiration. My mother's animated nature, a trait she had carried since childhood, provided a welcome distraction from my troubles. I reminisced about how her vivacious personality had initially intimidated potential suitors until my father, drawn to her energy, had become her steadfast partner. Their love story, peppered with anecdotes of youthful charm, lifted my spirits. As we sat together, conversing warmly, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos of my marriage. My parents' unwavering support and my mother's infectious spirit reminded me that, despite the challenges, there was still light to be found in the darkness. I recalled an important matter and asked if I could bring Judson, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and Todd to my parents' home. It would be their first visit to my childhood home, and my mother-in-law eagerly expressed her desire to reconnect with my parents. Judson reluctantly agreed, and to my surprise, Todd, showing interest in making pizza, volunteered to join us. I suspected he wanted to ensure Judson behaved himself. My parents gladly agreed, excited to showcase the deliciousness of our pizzas. Mom, perhaps a bit too enthusiastic, exclaimed, "Of course. We'll make them realize how delicious our pizza is." I chuckled, knowing her excitement could sometimes be overwhelming. So we found ourselves at my parents' pizza shop, unaware of the brewing tension ahead. Todd, usually the peacemaker, was ready for any storm that Judson might brew. The moment Judson laid eyes on the quaint pizza shop, he couldn't help but sneer. "Still as old-fashioned as ever," he remarked. Fortunate that my mother wasn't there to hear his comment. Knowing her fiery spirit, she might have banned him from the shop on the spot. Ignoring his snide remark, I led everyone inside. Mom greeted them cheerfully, welcoming them warmly. "Long time no see, Judson. Ashley has told me a lot about you, she said, her words laced with sarcasm that Judson seemed to miss entirely, much to Todd's subtle amusement. As Mom continued with her warm greetings, she turned to Todd, remarking on his appearance. "You're Todd, right? So tall and handsome. You look like a model," she exclaimed, overwhelming Todd, who offered a puzzled smile in response. Politely, he thanked her and joined the rest of the group. Meanwhile, Dad was busy preparing pizzas while Mom attempted to serve some drinks and popular side dishes. Judson, however, couldn't resist making a disparaging remark, commenting on the shop's appearance. "Build the store on your mother's old and dirty," he scoffed, displaying his usual lack of tact. My emotions churned with a mix of anger and apprehension as I watched my mother prepare drinks right in front of me. I couldn't bring myself to meet her gaze, so consumed was I by fear. Then, amidst the tension, a menacing voice sliced through the air, demanding a repetition of an earlier remark. My usually cheerful mother's tone dripped with quiet fury, sending shivers down my spine. Despite attempts from my mother-in-law and Todd to intervene, my father-in-law brazenly echoed his disrespectful sentiment, deeming both the shop and its proprietor unfit, even suggesting the risk of food poisoning. My mother, seething with rage, abandoned the drinks and retrieved a 1-liter bottle of wine, her demeanor sharp as she confronted my father-in-law, warning him of dire consequences if he continued his insults. Startled by her forcefulness, he attempted one last jab at her appearance before my mother, fueled by indignation, made a move to retaliate. With a swift intervention from my father, disaster was narrowly averted, but the damage had been done. My father-in-law and Judson, sneering in disdain, exited the shop, leaving a cloud of tension in their wake. Despite my mother's impulse to pursue them, my father and I held her back, struggling to contain her fury. Amidst the chaos, my mother-in-law and Todd offered profuse apologies, though I knew the fault lay not with them but with the condescending attitudes of my father-in-law and Judson. Their callous remarks had ignited the conflict, leaving me seething with anger and hurt. Recognizing my turmoil, my mother-in-law addressed me, expressing regret and suggesting divorce as a viable option for my well-being. Todd, in his quiet manner, echoed her sentiment, recognizing the pattern of such incidents. As I wrestled with conflicting emotions, torn between loyalty to my family and the turmoil within my marriage, the regretful expressions on my mother-in-law and Todd's faces mirrored my own internal struggle. Contemplating divorce, I couldn't shake the guilt I felt for my mother-in-law and Todd. As my father and I struggled with what to do next, my mother cut through the tension with her blunt observation. "You two don't seem happy, especially Todd. You can leave whenever you want, right?" Her direct question caught Todd off guard. He confessed his concern for his aunt, unable to abandon her despite his disdain for my father-in-law and Judson. It was his loyalty to my mother-in-law and his sense of duty toward the other employees that held him back. My mother-in-law, overwhelmed by Todd's true feelings, broke down in tears, burdened by guilt for holding him back. Feeling lost, my father and I exchanged confused glances, unsure of how to proceed. But then, my mother's cheerful laughter cut through the tension. "Ha, that's easy. Leave it to me," she declared, surprising us all. With newfound determination, I made up my mind. After discussing our plans for the future, I returned home to face Judson. Straightforwardly, I announced my decision to sever ties with his family, unable to forgive my father-in-law's hurtful words. Judson's scornful laughter in response only fueled my resolve. I handed him the divorce papers I had prepared, issuing a final warning. "Don't come crying to me after our divorce," I cautioned, but Judson, unable to comprehend the gravity of the situation, remained indifferent. As our marriage dissolved, my mother-in-law and Todd were spared from the ordeal. Though my life was fraught with stress, exacerbated by my father-in-law's insensitivity, I found solace in the freedom of my newfound independence after the divorce. Upon returning to my parents' home about a month later, my ex-father-in-law and ex-husband Judson appeared, their faces drained of color. They delivered divorce papers and a curt message, claiming they were cutting ties with us. Maintaining composure, I faced my ex-father-in-law and remarked on the unfortunate timing of our late-life divorce. My laughter seemed to unnerve Judson further, who muttered about employees quitting and feeling betrayed by Todd, his supposed brother. But Todd's voice, cutting and cold, interrupted Judson's self-pity. He rejected the brotherly title Judson had bestowed upon him. revealing he had never considered Judson as such. Suddenly, Todd emerged, stunning my ex-father-in-law and Judson. Then my former mother-in-law appeared quietly from the shadows. As my ex-in-laws stood dumbfounded, my mother made a bold entrance, revealing that they had been scouted by her company and that they now owned a French restaurant. My ex-father-in-law broke into a cold sweat at this declaration, while my father, observing the scene, smiled modestly. He revealed that running the pizza shop had merely been a hobby. My wife's family owned a group of restaurants, and they had graciously accepted him as their son-in-law. At the mention of the company's name, my ex-father-in-law and Judson stumbled. Realizing the vast difference in scale between their restaurants and our company, it became clear why they had been relegated to running the pizza shop instead of being involved in the family business. Years ago, my father had suffered a collapse from overworking, prompting doctors to suggest he pursue something he enjoyed for his recovery. So my mother and I had reopened this pizza shop, which had been my late grandfather's hobby. In truth, it was all part of a ruse, allowing them to run the company smoothly in my parents' absence with the help of dedicated and skilled employees. While seemingly running the pizza shop, my parents were actually overseeing their work, earning the admiration of their staff. Under my mother's guidance, our company took control of the restaurant previously managed by my ex-father-in-law and Judson. The once complacent duo now stood stunned as my father calmly addressed them. "It's evident to me that both of you lack the necessary skills to manage your business," he declared, citing concerns voiced by employees regarding their management abilities. With a firm stance beside my father, my mother delivered a decisive message. "We're entrusting the management of the French restaurant to Todd. He has full authority over you both," she proclaimed. Ex-father-in-law and Judson protested, claiming their approval was needed, but their objections fell on deaf ears. This decision wasn't solely my parents' but also reflected the sentiments of the disgruntled employees. Now, my ex-mother-in-law would support Todd, her nephew, in a supervisory role. Todd and my ex-mother-in-law shared a glance, and with calm determination, Todd expressed his gratitude for their support before revealing his true feelings. "While I owe you for taking me in as a child," Todd began, his voice turning icy, "my grudge against Judson is immeasurable. For him, it's even greater." His declaration left no room for forgiveness or mercy, stripping my ex-father-in-law and Judson of all managerial authority. Todd's cold resolve was clear. Then my ex-mother-in-law delivered a final blow, leaving my ex-father-in-law and Judson reeling. Upon returning to my parents' home about a month later, my ex-father-in-law and ex-husband Judson appeared, their faces drained of color. They delivered divorce papers and a curt message, claiming they were cutting ties with us. Maintaining composure, I faced my ex-father-in-law and remarked on the unfortunate timing of our late-life divorce. My laughter seemed to unnerve Judson further, who muttered about employees quitting and feeling betrayed by Todd, his supposed brother. But Todd's voice, cutting and cold, interrupted Judson's self-pity. He rejected the brotherly title Judson had bestowed upon him, revealing he had never considered Judson as such. Suddenly, Todd emerged, stunning my ex-father-in-law and Judson. Then my former mother-in-law appeared quietly from the shadows. As my ex-in-laws stood dumbfounded, my mother made a bold entrance, revealing that they had been scouted by her company and that they now owned the French restaurant. My ex-father-in-law broke into a cold sweat at this declaration, while my father, observing the scene, smiled modestly. He revealed that running the pizza shop had merely been a hobby. My wife's family owned a group of restaurants, and they had graciously accepted him as their son-in-law. At the mention of the company's name, my ex-father-in-law and Judson stumbled, realizing the vast difference in scale between their restaurants and our company. It became clear why they had been relegated to running a pizza shop instead of being involved in the family business. Years ago, my father had suffered a collapse from overworking, prompting doctors to suggest he pursue something he enjoyed for his recovery. So my mother and I had reopened this pizza shop, which had been my late grandfather's hobby. In truth, it was all part of a ruse, allowing them to run the company smoothly in my parents' absence with the help of dedicated and skilled employees.
From now on, this will be my home. Everyone else needs to leave. Wait, why is this happening all of a sudden? After the funeral of my mother, who we had been living with, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law directed harsh words at me. Despite my husband's attempts to mediate, their attacks continued. You're being deceived. Have you been brainwashed or something? Probably, this situation is because of your mother spoiling you. Ultimately, your mother is to be blamed for raising you like this. I could tolerate being criticized myself, but I couldn't stand them blaming my mother. I'm Kimberly, a 35-year-old married woman. I met Matt, who is a year older than me, at work, and we got married 5 years ago. My husband, and my mother had been living together, but a lot had happened over these 5 years. When we got married, I was working at a real estate company owned by my father. I had always been interested in money and the flow of people, so I studied economics in college and applied that knowledge to my job. However, at work, some people recognized my achievements as my own skills, while others simply saw it as my parents' influence. As proof of that, those who spoke ill of me often referred to me not by name but as the boss daughter. And my husband held a top position in the sales department of the same company where I worked. Many women showed interest in him. And being in a relationship, I often felt uncomfortable glances directed my way. Of course, I didn't believe that all my success at work was solely due to my abilities. I recognized that it was a result of the cooperation of those around me. However, I was troubled by the label of the boss daughter that seemed to stick to me in that situation. It was during those difficult days when I was working with these feelings. Then my father passed away. My brother took over as the company's president. Perhaps because of that, the criticism directed at me became even harsher. They made him president because she's a failure, I could hear them saying. I started being mocked as the boss sister more frequently. Normally, it might have just been irritation, but at that time, I had just lost my father. I was emotionally drained, and those words cut deep into my heart. After my father's funeral, I began to think about what I really wanted to do. My mother had always taught me to live freely since I was a child, but I had always felt that working in my father's company was the natural path. I was satisfied with my current job, but it had many elements that were pushing me to my limits. Continuing like this, I felt that something was missing to inspire me. After much thought, I declared to my husband that I wanted to become an investor. Matt didn't reject my unexpected decision and supported me. What also influenced my career change was living with my mother after my father's death. When I told her I wanted to quit my job and become an investor, she smiled and said, "You should have pursued your favorite path without worrying about your father from the beginning." It was soon after my father's death. Saying such things might seem unreasonable. I might be seen as running away from my colleagues. But before talking to my mother, I had worried about such things, but seeing her smile, I no longer cared about other people's opinions. Amid the busy days of funerals, inheritance, and moving, I embarked on a new start as an investor. Naturally, not everything went smoothly from the beginning, but my calm husband and mother supported me each step of the way. Using my past savings and the inheritance my father left behind, my investments progressed smoothly thanks to their support. After a few years, my income surpassed what I used to earn. During these fulfilling days, there were people who troubled me. They were my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. My sister-in-law, 4 years older than me and still single, had never seemed to like me much from the time our marriage was decided. My mother-in-law, despite being the daughter of the company boss, seemed to see me, a working woman, as nothing more than a rich family's daughter. Every time I visited my in-laws, they would wait until my husband and father-in-law were absent and make sarcastic remarks to me. "Can a pampered girl like you do household chores? Housework is women's work. Don't make Matt do it." Mother, I've been properly taught household chores by my own mother, so there's no problem. But I also work, so Matt and I help each other out in our daily lives. He's willing to share the responsibilities with me. However, my mother-in-law never accepted that. My sister-in-law frequently expressed her dissatisfaction in front of me, saying, "I can't believe a woman letting her husband do household chores." And after my father-in-law's death, my relationship with my mother-in-law worsened even further. "You have it good, don't you? Living comfortably on Matt's income alone. I've had to give up so much since my husband passed away. Why do you get to live freely, Kimberly?" "Mother, as I mentioned before, I earn an income as an investor. I'm not just relaxing at home. Despite appearances, I actually have less free time than when I was working a regular job. Still, you keep saying that while you're cooped up at home all the time. If you're so independent, you could at least give me some pocket money. You don't have children, so you're truly an incapable wife," my mother-in-law criticized. After my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law became fixated on money. She misunderstood my tendency to stay home as being unemployed and seemed upset by my financial stability. Nevertheless, I had no intention of providing her with money. My mother-in-law insisted that she could endure it, but every time I visited my in-laws, I noticed new luxury items. Even if I gave her money as she requested, I could easily imagine how it would be spent. I often received sarcastic remarks when visiting my in-laws, but my husband seemed unaware of how his mother and sister treated me. I liked his trusting nature, so I kept the details of his mother and sister's behavior from him. However, I had confided in my mother once. "Why can't I get pregnant?" I had asked. Well, getting pregnant in one's 30s is not uncommon. As I approached 35, I felt a vague sense of anxiety weighing heavily on me. Every time I visited my in-laws, my mother-in-law would ask, "When are you having a baby?" Her words, calling me useless, stuck with me, and I inadvertently mentioned it. However, my mother showed a surprised expression. "I had you at 35, you know? Don't worry, God will bless you at the right time," she said. My heart felt lighter hearing my mother's words, and from then on, I could remind myself that children are a blessing whenever my mother-in-law asked about them. After these tumultuous 5 years, I had finally grown accustomed to this life. Suddenly, my mother passed away. The cause was a subarachnoid hemorrhage. My mother, who had always been cheerful and sunny, passed away, and I sank into deep grief. Even my kind-hearted husband seemed shocked by my mother's death after living together for several years. With the reality of my mother's passing still not fully sinking in, the funeral took place. Many people attended the funeral of my mother, who had continued to work at the company my brother took over even after my father's death. Among them were my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law. It seemed like they arrived when my husband had just stepped away from his seat. While saying, "We're family, so there's no need," they began signing the guest book without flowers or sympathy cards. Faced with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's lack of condolences, I could only stand there in bewilderment. However, when my husband returned, their attitude changed. "You must be going through a lot too, but I'm sure Kimberly is even more shocked. Please support her properly," they said, as if they were genuinely concerned about me. At that moment, I was already overwhelmed with responding to the words of other mourners. After the funeral had concluded, my husband, Matt, and I returned home. When we were hit with the fatigue of the busy days, the doorbell rang. My husband answered it, and there stood my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Perhaps my kind-hearted husband thought they had come to comfort me. He unhesitatingly invited them into the house. As my mother-in-law and sister-in-law sat in the living room, they wore ironic smiles while looking at me. And then, they uttered unexpected words. From now on, this will be my home. Everyone else needs to leave. However, my mother-in-law did not stop speaking. Until now, we overlooked it because her mother was here, but now it's just Kimberly, who is unemployed and is shut in. If you continue to associate with such a woman, even you will go downhill. We will live here together, so break up with Kimberly. What are you saying, Mom? At a time like this? And what's this about being unemployed? Kimberly may not be working outside, but I've said multiple times that she's an investor. I'm saying it now because it matters. If things continue like this, you will end up supporting Kimberly entirely. Until now, Kimberly was able to act freely because her mother was providing assistance, right? But now that her mother is gone, Kimberly will become dependent on you. As my mother-in-law spoke, my sister-in-law immediately chimed in. You may act like you're working and claim to be an investor, but aren't you just playing around with stock trading? I can imagine a woman like you being a suitable wife. Matt deserves someone better. Wait a minute. Why are you blaming Kimberly like this? She's earning her keep. Don't say she's just playing around. Matt, you might be fooled. Kimberly's mother coddled her all these years and may have brainwashed you. That's right. It's all because her mother spoiled Kimberly. I understand that you are trying to protect her, but fundamentally, it's her mother who raised Kimberly like this that's the problem. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law said. When they spoke ill of my mother, my anger surged all at once. While I could tolerate insults directed at me, I would never tolerate criticism of my mother. Please don't insult my mother. I expressed my anger and stared at my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Yeah, I bet you don't like hearing your mother being spoken ill of. Until now, she supported your princess-like lifestyle and allowed you to be unemployed and a shut-in. Now that your mother is gone, you're facing the harsh reality. My mother-in-law said, pityingly, while looking at me as if she had won. My clenched fist trembled with anger, but I took a deep breath to calm myself and tried to respond. However, before I could say anything, it was Matt who spoke first. Please stop, Mom. Don't insult Kimberly or her mother. Kimberly is working and not just staying holed up at home. She's a capable investor. Both you and I have always supported Kimberly's efforts. If you think she's just playing around, I won't accept it either. Matt, usually composed, raised his voice in anger. Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, as well as I, were surprised by this. My mother-in-law seemed unable to grasp the situation and began to defend herself frantically. Matt, don't get so angry. But it's true that your income has supported your lifestyle. Kimberly enjoyed a life of luxury thanks to her mother's help. And you bought this high-rise condo for her, didn't you? Matt, you deserve better. If you live with us, I'll take care of all the household chores. A small allowance should be enough. And, wait, Mom, don't you know? Interrupting my mother-in-law, Matt sounded alarmed. My mother-in-law's face twisted in confusion. What do you mean, don't you know? What? My mother-in-law gasped in surprise at Matt's words. This apartment belongs to Kimberly. She looked wide-eyed, unable to believe what she was hearing. Huh? This condo is Kimberly's. Didn't you buy it for her, Matt? When did I ever say that? This condo was left by Kimberly's father, and he inherited it. So, Kimberly is the owner. Plus, we split the living expenses equally. I don't know what you think, but in reality, Kimberly earns more than I do. What? My mother-in-law and sister-in-law exclaimed in shock. And no wonder, they had been criticizing me as unemployed and a shut-in all along. Meanwhile, Matt had excelled in his job, even becoming a department head at a young age. They never could have imagined that I earned more than him. My mother-in-law was overwhelmed by Matt's words and fell silent. Instead, my sister-in-law spoke up. Is that true? Being an investor, can you really earn that much? Just personal trading. It's hard to believe you make more than a regular employee. I can't speak for other investors, but Kimberly has a keen investment sense. Everything she said is true. And seriously, insulting my beloved wife like this? Saying this is my house? That's not a joke. Get out of here right now. This is Kimberly's house. Upon hearing this, my sister-in-law appeared unsettled and made an even more astonishing statement. Wait a moment. We were planning to live here starting today, and we've already sold our house. What? We have just heard that they sold their house and could hide our surprise. You sold the house. Why all of a sudden? I wish you had at least discussed it with me. Well, we thought we could live here and we needed the money. I quit my job, thinking that Matt would take care of things. So I can't stay here. Mom, can you explain to Matt a bit? My sister-in-law appealed to my husband while looking at their stunned mother. But my mother-in-law, still in shock, couldn't seem to recover. Watching this, my husband expressed his anger. My sister-in-law, at a loss, turned to me next. Kimberly, I'm sorry for everything. Please, I'm begging you, convince Matt. We can't go on like this. If you've sold your house, you should have a substantial amount of money, right? Why can't you manage with that? I coldly brushed off my desperate sister-in-law. In response, she became angry and defensive. Don't act so high and mighty. Just because you're making money from your investments doesn't mean you can look down on me. I've had enough. Please, just be quiet, Cess. My husband's strong, angry voice drowned out my sister-in-law's. She fell silent, and my husband shot her a piercing look. Enough about the family home. You can use the money you got from selling it for your future. Please leave this place right now. Saying that, my husband escorted my mother-in-law and sister-in-law out of the house and locked the door. For a while, we could hear the doorbell ringing, banging on the door, and my sister-in-law's cries. But eventually, silence returned. A few days later, we heard from relatives that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had moved to a modest apartment and were starting a new life together. It seems the family home didn't sell for a high price due to its poor location, but they were managing to make ends meet with the money they got. However, my sister-in-law couldn't find a stable job and quickly faced financial difficulties. She tried to rely on my husband several times, but he firmly refused. They sold all their brand name items and currently support themselves through part-time jobs. On the other hand, I was free to work as an investor without troublesome people around me. And next year, we were expecting an addition to our family. I gently stroked my growing belly, remembering my mother's words, God will grant it at the right time. Reflecting on it, I felt gratitude once again while thinking of my mother. My name is Jane. I am currently fulfilling my role as a professional while simultaneously raising my beloved only son, Paul. I have a long history of work experience and never intended to give up my career, even after getting married. Especially in my small but independent company, I have never faced a situation where my salary was reduced even after returning to work post-childbirth. During the leave I took for my son's childcare, I entrusted the management of the company to someone I trust, so I never worried about the management or progress of the business. However, the only issue that troubles me amidst my peaceful days is entirely different. It involves the presence of my mother-in-law. My husband Danny, our son Paul, and I lived together in a comfortable house. But soon after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law suddenly imposed herself into our home. I assumed she would return to her own home after a short stay, but she chose to continue living with us without showing any intention to leave. When I gently inquired, "How long do you plan to stay with us?" her reaction was unexpected. She became emotional and exclaimed, "How could a heartless daughter-in-law attempt to drive out an old woman like me? After losing my beloved husband, being forced to live alone in my hometown is incredibly cruel." Danny, who had overheard part of the conversation, rushed to her side and comforted her. "Mom, it's okay. I would never kick you out, so please don't cry." After she calmed down, Danny took her to a different room. Once we were alone, he looked at me sharply and accused, "How can you say such horrible things to my mother? Do you not have a heart?" Misunderstandings might have arisen because Danny did not hear the whole conversation, but I had not forbidden my mother-in-law from living with us. As I explained, I was just asking how long you plan to stay, not that I wanted her to leave. He retorted, "Asking about the stay sounds like you want her to leave early. Can't you understand other people's feelings?" I regret using inappropriate words, but I never intended to drive her out. However, Danny, taking my mother-in-law's excessive reaction at face value, seemed to have decided I was in the wrong. I had no choice but to leave the situation as it was, making my daily life's small troubles deepen due to complex family relationships and the nuances of emotions involved. As a business owner, mother, and wife, I juggle these roles daily, trying to balance each. I wonder how long my mother-in-law plans to stay in our home. Asking her directly would likely result in her accusingly crying and appealing to Danny, so I hesitate to ask directly. Yet, when I contemplated how long she might stay, she unexpectedly announced, "I've sold my old house, so I'm moving all my belongings here," in front of the moving company truck parked outside our home, leaving me speechless. It was my day off, and I had planned to take Paul to the amusement park. However, Danny approached my mother-in-law, suggesting, "Then, today will be for sorting things out." This visit to the amusement park was a promise made long ago, eagerly anticipated by Paul, who looked disappointed when he asked, "Mom, what about the amusement park?" "Don't worry, Paul. As promised, we're going to the amusement park," I reassured him. Danny frowned and showed his dissatisfaction, asking, "Are you planning to leave the luggage unattended just for going to the amusement park?" I confidently argued, "Why should we change our plan for a family visit to the amusement park, breaking a promise to our child for sorting luggage?" I find such behavior unacceptable. The visit to the amusement park had been planned weeks in advance, with all preparations made for that day. Yet, I was not informed about the move, and when told today was the day for unpacking, I prioritized the plans already set. Nevertheless, my mother-in-law began to cry exaggeratedly, claiming Jane finds living with me uncomfortable. That's why she prioritizes her child over me. Hearing this, the movers, either feeling the situation was deadlocked or tired of my mother-in-law's exaggerated performance, quietly pointed out, "Unpacking can wait. Shouldn't promises to children take priority? And did you properly inform your wife about the move?" Upon hearing the calm comment, my mother-in-law blushed and felt ashamed. Danny, witnessing this development, did not defend her but merely looked at me intently. It appeared that Danny prioritized helping his mother with the move over our planned enjoyable family visit to the amusement park. In light of this situation, I decided to take my son, Paul, to the amusement park as previously planned. Unfortunately, this choice created a noticeable distance between my husband and me. One day, my mother-in-law said to me, "Jane, would you mind staying at home on your next day off?" I asked her why. "The truth is, I want to spend time with Paul, but since you always monopolize him, I hardly get the chance to play with him," she complained. This request came about a week after she had moved into our house without permission. She probably overheard my plans to take Paul to the shopping mall on my next day off. Suddenly, she forbade me from visiting the shopping mall, asserting, "Danny, Paul, and I will go to the shopping mall, so you should stay at home." Normally, there would be an option for the whole family to go out together, but excluding me seemed very selfish. Having witnessed her previous fake crying and such behavior, I could no longer trust her words. Therefore, considering it unthinkable to leave my child with someone I couldn't trust, I suggested, "Why don't we all go out together?" Although she looked displeased, she could not directly accuse me of being mean and reluctantly agreed. At the shopping mall, I began selecting clothes for Paul as originally planned, choosing slightly larger sizes considering children's rapid growth. My mother-in-law interrupted, "Why can't you choose the right size? This is the perfect size for Paul, bringing a size that fits him right now." Even when I explained, "Children grow fast," she argued. "When he grows, we can just buy new clothes. There's no need to save so much." I was dumbfounded by her short-sightedness. Selecting perfectly fitting clothes and buying new ones every time they become small is clearly a waste of money. We didn't have the financial leeway to spend money in such a way at our house. When I hesitated to purchase, Danny appeared and pointed out, "I support the family financially. If you try to save, it makes me look stingy to others." Eventually, Danny covered the shopping expenses for my mother-in-law. Paul wore his new clothes comfortably for a while but soon complained, "These clothes are too tight now," and stopped wearing the clothes chosen by my mother-in-law. She seemed to have mixed feelings about this change. Out of necessity, I passed the outgrown clothes to a colleague's mother I had befriended at the daycare. This act was well received, making me feel happy. However, the existence of the daycare seemed undesirable to my mother-in-law. "Why do you need to leave Paul with others when I'm here? Moreover, continuing to work with a child is not good for their education," she criticized. I couldn't agree with this point, responding, "The reality is, we can't make ends meet without my job," but she just snorted, "How much do you even earn?" I'm confident Danny's earnings surpass that. "We can manage without your help. Besides, you're probably a burden at work anyway." It seemed possible that Danny hadn't told his mother about my role as a business owner. His occasional bragging nature might have led him to hide such an important fact, perhaps to avoid letting his mother know that his wife earns more than he does. Faced with such a situation, I was deeply disappointed. "Actually, I earn more than Danny," I explained calmly yet firmly. My mother-in-law's response turned to anger. "How can you say such a thing? Looking down on your own husband and boldly declaring you earn more. Do you not respect your husband? You neglect your duties at home and boast about out-earning him. Don't you have any respect for him? Danny can manage perfectly fine without you," she exclaimed furiously. As her anger reached its peak and her voice echoed throughout the room, Danny appeared, asking, "What's going on here?" As if she had found reinforcements, my mother-in-law spoke with renewed vigor. "Hey, Danny. Actually, we wouldn't be troubled without Jane, right? It should just be you, me, and Paul living happily together. Don't you think our life is being constrained because Jane is here?" She said, "What? Yeah," Danny hesitantly but eventually showed his agreement. "Then the best thing to do is to divorce," she continued, and shockingly, she immediately took out a divorce form. It seemed she had wanted our divorce for some time. I no longer had any expectations for a father who prioritizes his mother over his child. However, I had no intention of giving up custody of my child. "It seems my presence is entirely unwelcome. If you wish for a family of 3, then I shall leave this house," I responded calmly. And without hesitation, I signed the divorce form she proposed. Despite forcing me to cancel our amusement park plans and insisting on helping with the packing, as soon as I started preparing to move out, she took Danny on a trip. Though she invited Paul to a trip, he had seen her unpleasant behavior towards me and still resented her for nearly causing us to miss our amusement park trip. He chose to stay with me, declining her invitation. Thus, Danny and she ended up going on a trip alone. I took this opportunity to move mine and Paul's belongings to a new home. I also left a letter stating that the responsibility for future rent payments, custody, and property division would be Danny's, as outlined through a lawyer. Returning from a week-long trip, Danny and his mother, unaware of the situation, contacted me surprisingly quickly. "Jane, why did you take Paul with you?" "Mom is worried. I'm supposed to have custody, aren't I?" he accused. It became clear at that moment that Danny had not yet read the letter I left. "Please read the letter on the living room table," I said. Danny replied, "Oh, Mom said she would look at it first. I've outlined that you'll be taking on $4,000 rent responsibility, that I will not transfer Paul's custody, and that we'll discuss property division through a lawyer," I explained. "Rent is $4,000, he exclaimed in surprise. He knew the housing was rented and that I had been making the payments, but he was unaware of the specific amount. I couldn't believe he was unaware of the rent amount while managing our finances. Indeed, this house was a rental, costing a hefty $4,000 monthly, and initially, I was against living here. However, Danny was adamant about living in this house, and eventually, we rented it according to his wishes. As a president, you should have no problem with this level of rent, right?" he said, leaving the burden to me. As a result, I ended up paying $4,000 rent monthly, with Danny covering other living expenses. However, he was careless with money and prone to spending impulsively. There was an instance at the shopping mall where, after shopping without calculating, my mother-in-law ended up short at the register and reluctantly called me for help. It seems this mother and son lack financial management skills, often spending on personal luxuries before covering living expenses. I had to cover the shortfall each time. I had savings for Paul's future and was putting my entire salary into our household, leaving me with very little personal spending money. Recently, I also had to cover the expenses and pocket money for his mother, putting us in a financially tight situation. But with the divorce finalized, I am relieved from the burden of $4,000 monthly rent. Registering the house under his name, which was done for his vanity, turned out to be fortunate. This allows me to withdraw from the financial carelessness of the two, bringing significant mental relief. "There's no way I can pay that amount. You've always been paying, continue doing so," he pleaded. "Why should I pay the rent for a house I no longer live in? I was driven out by your mother. The divorce is finalized, and there's no longer any connection between me and that house. Therefore, I have no obligation to pay the rent," I countered. So, please help me," Danny begged pathetically, but then it seemed his mother grabbed his phone, and her voice came through. "We can pay the rent without you. Even the amount you claim to have been paying is manageable for Danny," she asserted. "With a take-home pay of only $2,000, how do you plan to pay the monthly rent of $4,000? Are you going to use magic?" "That would be remarkable," I said sarcastically. "What?" came the reply. It seemed that my mother-in-law genuinely misunderstood Danny to be financially well off, probably because she saw him paying during their shopping trips, leading her to believe he was wealthy. I was just dumbfounded by this fact. I thought it was impossible for Danny, with his take-home pay of $2,000 and almost no savings, to afford the rent. Moreover, expecting them to raise a child healthily in their financially unstable situation would be difficult. Even without Paul's consent, custody would naturally fall to me, as Danny and my mother-in-law couldn't provide a suitable environment for raising a child. So, what should we do then? They were bewildered. If you can't pay the rent, you have no choice but to change your living situation. You'll have to notify the real estate agent to cancel your lease. The longer you delay, the more you owe in rent. I urged them to act swiftly. My words were met with, "Shut up. I know that much," from my mother-in-law, who clearly had no room for fake tears in this situation. After hanging up, I completed the move to a new apartment with Paul. This apartment is close to my workplace and conveniently located near shops and medical facilities. About a month after the divorce, my mother-in-law and Danny showed up at my company. They began loudly demanding to see me at the entrance, as reported by the receptionist. I was out having lunch with Paul at the time but hurried back with him upon hearing they were causing a commotion. Fortunately, there's a daycare within the company, so I could bring Paul inside. Seeing my mother-in-law and Danny waiting at the reception was a surprise. I was puzzled by their visit since the lawyer had reported they hadn't responded to our discussions. "Jane, can't you just come back home? We understand you were making the payments. Please stop being stubborn," my mother-in-law pleaded with tears, thinking her act would work on someone other than her son. She clearly intended to paint me as the villain. Witnessing her behavior, Danny joined in. "What do you mean by getting a lawyer involved? This is a family matter. Surely, Paul would prefer his parents to be together. However, a father who chooses his mother over his son would only sadden the child." I sighed and replied, "Now that we're divorced and essentially strangers, please communicate through my legal representative for anything." Danny, realizing he wouldn't get through to me directly, turned to Paul with my mother-in-law. "Hey, Paul, you want to be with your dad and grandma, right? Aren't you lonely when your mom is always busy with work?" Frightened by their words, Paul hid behind me and cried out loudly, "I hate you both because you're mean." His crying had a more significant impact on the people around than my mother-in-law's fake tears. Soon after, other employees came and escorted Danny and my mother-in-law outside, to my relief. Later, after notifying them through the lawyer that any further company visits or following us would be reported to the police, they quieted down. Subsequently, Danny and my mother-in-law abandoned their $4,000 a month housing for a dilapidated apartment. Danny's fate took a darker turn as he had previously bragged about living in a luxurious home beyond our means at his workplace. Fearing the revelation of their move to a rundown apartment, he quit his job without consulting his mother, leading to her fury upon discovering his sudden job resignation. As a result, they started working to earn an income, frequently blaming each other for abandoning me and Paul, resulting in constant arguments. Despite this, they are trying to make ends meet, sending child support monthly while working hard. Meanwhile, my business is thriving, and despite the absence of his father, Paul is growing up to be a well-rounded boy. Even without an unfit father, I am determined to raise him well. I am Julia. I was abruptly woken up by a phone call just now. On the other end, my mother-in-law was saying something unclear. And the room is completely dark. That's obvious. It is late at night. The time is just past midnight. It's naturally dark because it's the middle of the night. No, that's not it. The lights won't turn on. Is that so? Is that so? What kind of response is that? You did something, didn't you? No, the one who did something was you, mother-in-law. Huh? Me? Yes, you kicked me out of the house. She balked for a moment as I raised my voice. However, she quickly retorted, "It's normal for a wife to leave if there's a divorce, isn't it?" That's right. If that's the case, let me speak clearly as well. I don't want to hear the complaints of a discarded wife. However, if you don't listen, you'll go from a dark house to a prison. Saying that, I started to tell my story. I first met my mother-in-law about a year ago. It was when I went with my husband Max to greet her and announce our marriage. Her home, where she lived, was in a luxury apartment, and at that time, Max was still living there as well. "Nice to meet you. I'm Julia." "Julia, what do you do for a living?" "I am currently working at a publishing house as a magazine journalist. However, I plan to resign due to marriage. I was thinking of becoming a full-time housewife. That's because being a magazine journalist is very demanding. I often had business trips to the countryside, spending about half of the month away from home. Even when at home, I was busy writing articles and barely managed to keep up with household chores. For that reason, I am planning to quit my job. Many mothers-in-law do not think highly of daughters-in-law who neglect their household duties, so I believed she would agree with my decision to resign after marriage. However, the mother-in-law in front of me frowned and said, "Can you manage without both working? My husband is on a solo assignment, so I can't help financially." "That's okay. I am already at a certain age and have saved up enough, I replied, feeling a bit of loneliness. I am 29 years old this year. Despite this, I had neither a fiancé nor a boyfriend and was so busy with work that I hardly had any male friends. My classmates were getting married one after another, and I was even receiving wedding invitations from colleagues at work. Feeling that this was not good, I started looking for a partner a year ago. I participated in matchmaking events almost every week, and finally found a reliable husband with a sturdy build who works at a security company. We matched in personality and interests. Therefore, we started considering marriage early on. It seemed Max felt the same way, as he proposed to me just a few months after we started dating. Our decision to marry was firm. Even though my mother-in-law opposed it, we intended to get married. While thinking about this, my mother-in-law said to me, "At this age, there are times I think I should have continued working. Is that so?" "Yes, so keep working. Don't have regrets." "Understood. I will continue working." Upon reflection, I felt there was some truth to her words. Thus, I decided to keep my job, and my mother-in-law also agreed to our marriage. Thus, we decided to get married. After submitting our marriage registration, I discussed with Max about our new home. Max was worried about his mother and wanted to live with her if possible. Having lived in his family home for a long time, he said it felt more settled. However, I was opposed. I wanted to avoid living with my mother-in-law at all costs. It might be one-sided, but I thought living together as daughter-in-law and mother-in-law could lead to trouble. I thought it would be better to live separately from the start to avoid any trouble. Max and I did not agree, and time passed by. Still, it was an issue that couldn't be ignored. As we continued discussing, Max made a suggestion. "Then, shall we ask my mother's opinion?" "Your mother's opinion?" "Yeah. Mom doesn't say anything wrong." At that moment, I was momentarily perplexed. Believing one's mother is always right is a typical characteristic of a mama's boy. Could it be, my husband is a mama's boy? If so, the mother-in-law would surely push for living together. I quickly said to Max, "Wait a moment. What? We are adults too, and relying on your mother is..." "Don't worry. It's not strange to listen to the advice of an elder." While saying this, Max dialed his mother's number. He was smiling brightly, and an indescribable atmosphere was floating around. Inside, I was panicking. Mom?" "Actually," Max explained the situation to his mother with a smile. Just when I thought it was over, Max's expression changed. Yeah, I understand." He ended the call looking dejected. "What's wrong?" When I asked, Max replied grumpily, "She said we should rent an apartment together, just the two of us." "Really? Why, you seem happy." "Do I? I wanted to live with Mom." "But your mother said you two should live by yourselves, right?" "Yeah," Max answered, clearly dissatisfied. In the end, it seemed he was not fully convinced. When I said I would pay the rent, Max reluctantly accepted. Thus, we somehow began our married life. Once we actually started living together, the joy was indescribable. We could fully enjoy our common hobby of watching movies without my mother-in-law interrupting. Also, when I was busy with work, Max actively helped with cooking and laundry. Before we got married, laundry would pile up, and I often relied on frozen meals. But having Max around meant I didn't have to worry about that anymore. He even came to greet me when I returned home. I was once again feeling how reassuring it was to have Max with me. One day, while feeling this happiness, I had to go on a business trip to Florida. "I'll be gone for 5 days, but I'll try to come back as soon as possible," I told Max as I left the house. Since our newlywed life was so enjoyable, I couldn't wait to return and finish my assignments ahead of schedule. I wonder if he'll be surprised by just a one-day difference? Thinking this, I hurried home. When I opened the front door of the house, I could hear voices coming from the room. "Max, the delicious food is ready." It was my mother-in-law's voice. I could also hear my husband's voice. Your cooking really is the best, Mom. Isn't it? Julia's cooking is a bit. Are you staying over tonight?" "Yes, I plan to." Hearing the cheerful conversation between my mother-in-law and husband made me a bit irritated. I'm certainly not good at cooking, but I didn't think I was completely incapable. Being criticized so openly made me angry. Usually, my husband never complained about me. This definitely sounded like something a mama's boy would say. I laughed self-deprecatingly and swung the living room door open with force. "I'm home," I said loudly. At that moment, both my husband and mother-in-law jumped in surprise. "Welcome back, Julia. You're early," my husband said to me, sounding frightened. "I finished my work early. By the way, why is your mother here? She heard you were away and came to make dinner specially. And she's staying over?" Well," my husband stuttered. Looking at my mother-in-law, she hurriedly began to clean up. "Mother-in-law, are you staying over?" "I really want to, but wouldn't I be in the way?" "Yes, you would," I answered, just as my husband raised his voice. "How could she be in the way? She's my mother. And even though by marriage, she's your mother too, Julia. But we are newlyweds. So what if we are? What does that have to do with anything?" My husband stood up and shouted. Overwhelmed by his attitude, I fell silent. Feeling he had gained the upper hand, my husband said, "Mom, you're staying over tonight, right? Is that okay?" "It's fine. Then, I'll stay over," my mother-in-law answered with a broad smile. Seeing her face, I couldn't utter a word. At this moment, it seemed my role was cemented. Since that day, my mother-in-law began staying at our house frequently. Effectively, I was placed at the bottom of the household hierarchy. When I told my husband I would be late from work, he casually said, "It's okay. I'll have Mom come over." "What will your mother do when she comes?" "She'll cook and do the laundry." "Didn't Max used to do that before?" "Mom does it better." "But is my mom in the way?" When my husband pressed me like that, I couldn't argue back. I didn't want to be seen as a daughter-in-law who finds her mother-in-law bothersome. In the end, I had no choice but to follow what my husband said. However, I needed to find a solution to this situation. I began to ponder a good resolution during breaks at work, but such ideas are not easily conceived. At that moment, I suddenly received an email from my parents. When I read the email, I sighed and muttered, "They're doing whatever they want again." My parents are always all in on everything and act quickly once they decide. This time, they seemed to find charm in rural life. They informed me that they had moved to a small town in the countryside. Moreover, the move was inspired by an article I had written, so I couldn't even complain. When I asked about what they planned to do with their house and land, they said they would transfer it to me. However, I am currently enjoying my married life in a condo, and receiving a house and land would only complicate things. My parents also said I could sell them, but it's not that simple. Do you understand about the gift tax? If I receive a house and land, it's natural for gift tax to occur. Even if I have savings, I don't have the margin to pay such taxes. I have a sister, but she's a graduate student and not in a position to pay. Likewise, relatives are unlikely to accept the land or house considering the tax implications. Well, knowing those two, they've probably already discussed it with their relatives. This means that even if I accept the house and land, it would not cause problems among relatives. However, the obligation to pay taxes would fall on me. I decided to discuss this issue first with my husband. It turns out, we're going to receive the house and land. If we have a house, we can move there and save on rent, Max suggested. Based on Max's suggestion, we decided to move to the house that used to be my family home. Indeed, if we live there, we won't need to pay rent. However, the issue of taxes remains unresolved. There are options for loans or installment payments, but these won't reduce the tax nor eliminate the need to pay it. In the end, I'll probably be the one paying. I also considered selling the house and land. I haven't decided whether to sell yet, but I've requested an appraisal for now. Then, the night we finished moving into my childhood home, my mother-in-law suddenly came to our house. "Oh, what a lovely home." Yes, this was originally my family home. "It's been beautifully renovated, hasn't it?" My mother-in-law looked around happily. I felt somewhat uneasy. What brings you here today? When I asked my mother-in-law, my husband answered instead. Mom is going to live here with us, so she came to check out the rooms today. Live together? To my surprise, my mother-in-law continued. I was worried there might not be enough rooms since we hadn't decided on a place to live. Normally, there wouldn't be enough rooms. But this is a spacious single-family home, and there should be a room for me. So let's live together. That was my mother-in-law's argument. She didn't want to let her daughter-in-law, me, live in a house she was paying rent for. However, if she desired to live together, she might be asked to pay rent. That's why she recommended living in an apartment at the beginning of our marriage. Now the situation has changed, and there is a spacious house with land. There are many rooms, and more importantly, no rent is needed, which is a major attraction. If she lives in this house, she wouldn't need to pay rent. Additionally, she could use the remittances from my father-in-law for herself, thus gaining doubly. All of this seems very convenient for you, mother-in-law. What? Does the daughter-in-law have a complaint? Of course I do. This place is. I was about to argue when my husband interrupted. That's enough, Julia. You're the daughter-in-law. You should be a bit more tolerant. What? Why should I? You really are selfish. When the family decides, it's by majority vote, right? So, since Dad is on a work assignment, there are 3 of us at home, and the opinions of me and Mom align. What? You're so oblivious. So, in essence, we are a family of 3, me, my husband, and my mother-in-law. Since my husband and mother-in-law agree, I should also comply with their view. I can't accept this. For the time being, I kicked my mother-in-law out of the house that day. However, she is bound to strongly push for living together again in the future. During this difficult time, I had to go on a business trip. Reluctantly, I prepared for a one-night, 2-day business trip. I was sure my mother-in-law would come over while I was away. With that in mind, I hurried to work. Yet, my mother-in-law's audacity far exceeded my imagination. She had already imposed herself on my house. What is this? When I returned home, there was a truck parked in front of the house, and furniture like chests and dressing tables were being moved in. It looked as though someone was moving in, and then my mother-in-law suddenly appeared. Welcome back, Julia. What are you doing? I'm moving in. You can't be serious. Looking forward to living together. My mother-in-law smiled broadly, taking advantage of my absence. She had already moved in. This is absolutely impossible. For a daughter-in-law, you really don't know when to give up. If you don't like it, I'll just have to kick you out. Kick me out? This is my house. Anyway, I'll remove your things myself. Saying that, I entered the house. Once inside, my mother-in-law smirked and said, "You know nothing. Possibly removing someone's belongings is illegal. That's for rental agreements, isn't it? If it's family, it's even more complicated. Then I'll sell the house immediately." As I responded, my husband, sensing the commotion, hurried out. Seeing me, he said, "You're back. Julia, help Mom with the move?" That's a joke. I already refused. But we're family. If that's the case, I'm ending this family. I'm getting a divorce. I don't mind, but I won't leave this place until I get the house or the land. I intend to sell both the house and the land. As long as we live here, you can't sell it. My husband glared at me as he said this defiantly. This isn't a discussion. I'm getting a divorce anyway, so from now on, contact me through a lawyer. Saying that, I rushed inside the house and gathered the necessary items from my room. Then, I left the house immediately. Afterward, I quickly arranged to move my belongings out. The destination for my belongings was my sister's house. Since I often travel for work, I don't have many belongings. Therefore, I arranged to use a room at my sister's house. Furthermore, I hired a lawyer to proceed with the divorce. Surprisingly, my husband did not argue and agreed to the divorce negotiations. The last time we met at the lawyer's office, he said, "Finally, I can relax without any disturbances." I retorted, "This past week has been really tough, but now I finally feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders." Well, say whatever you want. But now we need to talk about property division. I've left that matter to the lawyer. Surely, you'll regret the day you drove me out. With those words, I left the lawyer's office. That night, while I was sleeping at my sister's house, I suddenly received a call from my mother-in-law. So, the room is completely dark. It's naturally dark because it's the middle of the night. You must have done something. As my mother-in-law pressed on, I explained what had happened. Then she retorted, "This is revenge for the divorce, isn't it? Don't you understand yet? I said I would sell the house. And I've stopped the gas, electricity, and water to prepare it for sale." "What? You stopped them?" After being driven out by my mother-in-law, I contacted the real estate agent I had previously asked for an appraisal. I requested to sell at the appraised price, but it wouldn't happen immediately, and I was told that the procedure would take some time. When I asked the agent how to proceed, they advised me to go ahead with stopping the utilities before moving out. Indeed, it is common to cancel these contracts when moving. I followed that procedure. That's why I stopped the water and electricity. What? Even if I turn the breaker on, the electricity won't come? That would be the case. My family home uses a smart meter, so the electricity supply should be remotely cut off. Turning on the breaker wouldn't work. There's nothing I can do now. Is this harassment? That wasn't my intention. However, misunderstanding that I was deliberately harassing her, she said, "This is going to court. I'll seek damages. Please do as you like. But have you forgotten what I just said?" "What?" "If you keep staying there, you might end up going to jail, you know?" "What? Jail?" "If there are noises in a completely dark house, the neighbors will become suspicious, won't they?" It seems she finally realized the seriousness of the situation. My mother-in-law was in a completely dark room. Moreover, the light from her smartphone was visible from outside. From the outside, it looked like someone had broken into the house. During this time, I could hear hurried, frantic sounds over the phone. Max's voice also sounded panicked. "Max, hurry. What's going on, Mom? What are you doing in the middle of the night? We need to leave here quickly." Along with that voice, I could hear police sirens in the distance. It looks like someone called the police. I sighed and ended the call. A few minutes later, I received a call from the police. I explained that the divorce had been finalized and that the individuals involved were my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. Fortunately, they were not arrested, but the incident attracted quite a bit of attention. The commotion spread around the neighborhood, and my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law were forced to leave the house. Moreover, this issue reached his workplace, and it seems he was fired. Since he worked for a security company where trust is paramount, this outcome was expected. Having lost their place to live, my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law moved in with my ex-father-in-law, who was on a work assignment. There, they received a severe reprimand and are currently working part-time at my ex-father-in-law's company. Later, I received a message from my ex-father-in-law that they would pay alimony from their part-time earnings. As for myself, this whole experience was recognized, and I was transferred to a department dealing with mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues in a weekly magazine. I now travel less and have a better environment to focus on my work. The house and land were sold, but the amount left after paying the taxes was not substantial. However, it is enough for a down payment on a new condo, so I'm considering buying one once things settle down. In the future, I hope to live there with a new partner, and for that reason, I am actively participating in matchmaking activities again. I am afraid of the weekend coming. Life in the dream home has just begun. Currently, we are hosting a party every week at our home to welcome my in-laws. My wishes are not reflected, and my time for rest is being cut short. At the party, I am made to work as hands and feet for my in-laws. My spouse and I have been married for 3 years, working together. In the early days of our marriage, we lived in a 2-room rental apartment. Hey, shall we start building our own house soon? Yes, I also want to live in our own house. Buying a house was a big investment. I supported my husband, who was loose with money, and worked hard on saving and budgeting. Finally, we were able to see the possibility of buying our own house and started looking for a property. How's the property search going? There's so much to decide, nothing has been finalized yet. I spent my holidays on property searches, and fatigue accumulated. Hey, could you help out a bit? I can't, I have work. You're really not reliable. Oh, right. How about searching with my parents? Why? I don't want to bother your parents. It's fine. My parents are also concerned. What do you mean? Well, it's all right. It's all right. Although I was concerned about my husband's hesitant talk, honestly, I was not good at getting along with my in-laws and preferred to avoid spending time together. Despite this, contrary to my expectations, I was contacted by my in-laws right away. Hey, have you decided on the new house? I was thinking of asking a construction company run by my friend. No, we want to decide on the new house by ourselves. Despite my indirect refusal, a few days later, I heard from a contact about a very good piece of land. I heard the construction company hasn't contacted you. Did you make sure to contact them? Before I knew it, plans were underway to build a house on a piece of land I didn't know about, by a construction company I didn't even know. Actually, we want to decide everything by ourselves. Oh, my son said he wants us to take care of it. Make sure all the appliances are fully electric. The intervention by my in-laws became stronger day by day. I asked my husband to ask his parents to stop interfering. Why can't you accept my parents' suggestions? I want to hear your thoughts. It's noisy. Just take my parents' opinions as mine. How can you say that? Proposing to create a vegetable patch where the car is supposed to be parked or installing a pizza oven in the kitchen, are those really your ideas? After such exchanges, one day came just before the construction was to start. Please confirm the contents of this contract one more time. It was a call from the construction company we had commissioned to build the new house. Since I had thoroughly discussed it with the architect, I replied, yes, there's no problem. Is there any mistake? The person from the construction company continued somewhat reluctantly. I had heard it was for you and your spouse to live in. Yes, that's right. What about it? Then the person from the construction company shared a shocking fact. This design, it's almost like it's for a two-generation household. I felt a sensation of my head turning blank. That's not right. I don't know how the plan was carried out, but my in-laws had intervened without permission in the design I confirmed with the construction company, saying changes are necessary and had it altered. Moreover, they spoke as if I had agreed to those changes. The construction company was also perplexed, and I deeply apologize. Then farm tools were delivered to where the garage was supposed to be made, and it had been switched to a plan to start a home garden. This, too, was the work of my in-laws. The builder asked me, is it really okay to start construction? A few days later, a notice of unexpected furniture delivery was in the mailbox. It was cash on delivery, and again, this was the work of my in-laws. This was clearly overstepping. It was no longer possible to solve this through my husband. I reached my limit of patience and appealed directly to my in-laws. Father, mother, please stop acting on your own. Why is it bad? It's wrong for you to interfere in the house we will live in. What? Our house? Incredibly, it seemed my in-laws had assumed we would be living together. I hurriedly contacted my husband. Your parents have a big misunderstanding. What do you mean? They think they will live in our new house with us. Oh, that conversation. My heart chilled at my husband's calm reaction. I couldn't believe it. I think that's the best idea. What are you talking about? I haven't heard anything about this. Well, I'm telling you now. That should be enough. Unbelievable. I absolutely oppose it. Wait a minute. This is about my parents. Why do you oppose it? It seemed my husband had no doubts about living with his parents. On the other hand, he pressed as if to blame me for my opposition. Can't you, as a wife, get along with my parents? But the design was changed without my consent. Well, the elderly like to meddle. It's from goodwill. That's not possible. There's no trust between me, you, and your parents. We can build that trust from now on. The problem is now. I can't live with people I can't trust. You're being too sensitive. Then, we should cancel the new house plan. Stop the construction. Let's calm down. My firm opposition led to the cancellation of the plan to live with my in-laws. Doubts about my husband remained unresolved, and it seemed he was also dissatisfied with me. Amidst this, our new house was finally completed. I felt positive for the first time in a while about deepening our family bonds while cooperating with my husband in this house. On moving day, when we had settled the luggage, my husband broached an important topic. Now that we have our own house, I've started to feel the responsibility of being the head of the family. I see. I want you to listen. I want you, as my wife, to have that sense of responsibility too. Being a wife, isn't that a bit much? Hey, I'm being serious here. I felt a bit of discomfort at my husband's confident posture with his arms crossed. However, thinking it was good that he started to feel a sense of responsibility, I replied, yes, understood. But I would soon regret that decision. It was the weekend, and my husband called me on his way home. Tomorrow, I've invited some colleagues from work over. I need you to prepare for the party. What, tomorrow? Why so sudden? Why? Because it's tomorrow. You'll have time to prepare. But I have a hair salon appointment tomorrow. What are you talking about? Think about what's more important. My husband insisted. My parents will come over to help, so be thankful. What? It was the first weekend after moving into our new house. I was looking forward to changing the layout of the kitchen and living room, but my excitement vanished in an instant. Furthermore, those in-laws of mine were coming to help. I couldn't help but feel anxious. On the day of the home party, my in-laws arrived early in the morning. As I was busy with the food preparation, when I asked for their help, they said, "Oh, such plain dishes. At least order some finger food. I'll handle the ordering." Actually, the food is already prepared and we have finger food ready. We can't afford any more orders. What are you saying? Are you trying to shame your husband? Being stingy could affect your husband's promotion. What an understanding wife you are. Could you help with the party preparations instead? Sorry, I have a hair salon appointment. See you later. Make sure to set up the food properly when it arrives. Leaving those words behind, my in-laws went out after only making their demands known. My husband was still asleep in his room. Somehow, I managed to finish the party preparations in time. When I tried to get myself ready before the guests arrived. Look, this place is dirty. Hey, what's this dust in the entrance? Clean it properly. We're running low on beer, go buy more. Ordered around by my husband and in-laws, who had just gotten ready, I ended up welcoming the guests without even having time to put on makeup. Welcome, everyone. Please, this way. Now, serve the guests some drinks. Hurry up, will you? The party that day was the toughest for me. My stylish mother-in-law treated me like a servant. Without introducing me, when I greeted a few guests myself, they were puzzled by my appearance in a greasy apron without makeup. They probably thought I was a servant of the house, which was humiliating. Afterward, my husband started to host parties every weekend, and my in-laws never failed to visit. Colleagues from work, their families, and even neighbors were invited without prior consultation. My in-laws continued to play the glamorous hosts at the parties without offering any help, ordering me around. My husband adopted the same attitude as his parents. Initially, I complained to my husband. Please, let's not have parties every weekend. Why not? Everyone's having fun. I work too, and preparing for parties all weekend really wears me out. My parents are helping, aren't they? Helping? You call that helping? It's because you can't handle the guests that my parents are stepping in. All your parents do is eat and talk without preparing or cleaning up. What do you mean? There's no need to talk about my parents like that. But it's true. First of all, it's because you refuse to live with them that my parents have to come from far away. I sighed internally at this exchange. My husband always brought up the fact that I had refused to live with his parents whenever I objected to something. He continued to argue that since I had accepted his requests, I should also listen to his desires. Amidst the days spent without rest, I suddenly realized that I hadn't yet invited my own parents to our new house. So I proposed, I want to skip the party this weekend and invite my parents over. What are you talking about? No, I object. Object. Do you even have the awareness of being a wife? You married into my family. And above all, don't belittle my parents. I'm not belittling anyone. Well, I don't mind you inviting them, but my parents come first. But your parents come every weekend, and because of the parties, I can never invite mine. How did it come to this? How much more does my husband expect me to sacrifice? Reaching this thought, I decided that I needed to consult someone about this situation. So, I called my mother and told her everything that had happened. I apologized tearfully for not being able to invite her to our new house. My mother was surprised but listened to me calmly. For now, come home this weekend, but I have to prepare for the party. You still haven't realized it, have you? Realized what? You're losing sight of yourself because of exhaustion. Awakened by my mother's words, I felt enlightened. And then my mother continued, I've come up with a plan, but I won't proceed if you're against it. Hearing the plan, I was taken aback. If executed, it would have a significant impact on my husband. I was left unsure whether to proceed. Talk to him one more time, then decide. My mother left the final decision up to me. I decided to talk to my husband again. Why are we back to this topic? Just invite your parents when mine aren't here. I interrupted my husband's words and made my position clear. Listen, this is your last chance. Not to plan home parties on his own. Of course, to get my consent for his parents' weekly visits too. And this time, to invite my parents. I conveyed these conditions, hoping my husband would accept them. Last chance, you're joking. I won't allow you or your parents to do as you please anymore. Listen, since you refuse to live with my parents, you should prioritize them. As usual, my husband started blaming me for lacking family awareness. Furthermore, he stated, a wife like you won't allow her family through our door. Never invite your parents, and if you're dissatisfied, leave. Realizing that arguing with him was futile, I had hoped patience would lead to his concession, but it was the opposite. Biting my lip, I conveyed my last hope, you'll regret this. However, he scoffed, I won't regret it, don't show your face to me again. With that, I left the house and spent some time at my parents' house. As time passed, I regained my composure. Following my husband had made me realize how brainwashed I had been. For my husband, it turned out that his self-esteem and vanity were more valuable than the concept of family. In his desire to appear admirable, he exploited our new house and his wife's role for selfish purposes. Afterward, I decided to listen to my mother's proposal. Several weeks had passed since I returned to my parents' home. My health had recovered. Since my workplace was close to my parents' home, my enthusiasm for work returned and I was living energetically. Yet, messages from my husband continued unabated, starting with I'll forgive you if, always from a position of superiority. He was always concerned about the preparations for the home parties. Lately, the gatherings we planned at our house were canceled. It's your fault. My position at work is getting worse because of this. How will you take responsibility? Think a little. I want you to fulfill your role as a wife at the important home parties. My husband was furious that I hadn't returned home, especially since he had a special home party planned for the end of the month. This party was to welcome important people from his workplace at our house, a highly prestigious event for him, supposedly ensuring his promotion if successful. On that special day, I, dressed up, headed to our home with my parents. My husband and in-laws were busy preparing to welcome the guests, managing the delivered food and drinks. My husband's bosses and colleagues were also present, and I exchanged greetings with them. "Oh, you look very charming in that dress." "Thank you." Seeing me, my husband and in-laws immediately approached with excitement. "Hey, what are you doing? Hurry up and help. What's with that outfit? What kind of wife are you, wandering around like that?" As my in-laws reached for the hem of my dress, my mother stepped forward from behind and clearly swatted their hands away. "Please don't touch the dress I designed with your greasy hands." "What is this? Who are you?" "Hey, that's my wife. You don't get to speak. It's unpleasant to be referred to in that manner towards my daughter." During this exchange, my husband's complexion rapidly changed. "You are what, daughter? You are the host of tonight's party, aren't you? Please show us around." "Oh, it was you who said we shouldn't cross the threshold of this house, right?" "Huh, what are you talking about? You said that?" Well, that." My husband's face turned from blue to red, changing like a traffic light. In fact, the guest of honor at today's gathering was my mother. My parents were executives in a major fashion industry company, and my husband's company had been planning to collaborate with the design department led by my mother for this fiscal year's business plan. Therefore, my husband suggested entertaining them with his proud home party. My mother, who operates under her maiden name, seemed unrecognized by my husband, although they had actually met before the marriage. Well, considering my husband's nature, he probably forgot. "Really, what kind of upbringing does your daughter have? Quick, to the kitchen. It's just right. Take your parents with you." "Stop it. This person is a special guest." "What?" My husband and in-laws were flustered and unsettled. My mother gave my husband a light glance, asking him to bring some drinks, please. Rushing to the kitchen, my husband returned with glasses. After checking the 2 glasses provided, she asked, "Could you also get one for my daughter?" Glancing at me, aware of his bosses and colleagues around, he brought a glass for me with his head down. I gracefully accepted it, giving my in-laws a firm look. "Could you also take care of the food?" What?" "Yes, understood. I'd like to sit down. Could you lend me a chair?" Yes, of course. Doesn't this seem like too few dishes?" Oh, does it? How about French? Shall we order some? Of course, the bill is on you." The budget is a bit. Oh dear, scrimping might affect your son's future, you know." While tilting my glass, I smiled warmly towards them. In fact, among those invited to today's party were individuals who had been acquainted with my mother from past visits to our house. And it seems they had relayed to my mother the cold treatment I received from my husband and in-laws at a previous home party. Dressed in a shabby apron, looking nothing like the lady of the house, I only realized she was your daughter when we exchanged greetings. She seemed very tired. My weakness had caused concern for my mother. Though I've regained my spirit now, that difficult period had weighed heavily on my heart. During the party, my mother kept my husband busy fetching drinks, continuously pointing out the work ethic of my in-laws, while my father deepened his acquaintance with people from my husband's workplace. After the party ended, I approached my husband. "Good work. Please, sign this." I handed him a divorce petition. Feeling humiliated by the day's events, my husband signed in a rage. Although my in-laws tried to stop him, my husband was resolute. "There, it's over. Don't ever show up in front of me again." Taking the divorce petition, I left my husband's house. Exiting the gate and looking back, I knew I would never return. Thus, I bid farewell to the dream home I once longed for. The house had changed my husband's character completely, and I had nearly lost myself in the process. My attachment to this house had already vanished. Leaving the home party behind felt liberating. Afterward, I focused on my work, trying to forget the unpleasant memories of the past. With the divorce, being freed from the mortgage payments of my husband's house and the expenses related to the parties, I found financial relief. I started a new life in a rented apartment, away from my parents' home. My ex-husband was transferred to another region by his company, seemingly seen as a liability in the business dealings involving my mother. Moving to a new place, my ex-husband could no longer live in the previous house. Burdened with the house's mortgage on his own, he sought support from his parents, who apparently refused. As a result, there's been tension between my ex-husband and his parents. What became of the house after I left is unknown to me. I've overcome past difficulties, decorating my new place to my liking, improving my cooking skills on weekends, and leading a fulfilling life. Occasionally, I invite my parents over and host small home parties with homemade dishes. In this way, I've been able to spend warm and wonderful times with my family. Moving forward, I plan to cherish my parents and live with gratitude for each happy day. The reason our household is struggling financially is because someone isn't employed, you know. While saying this, my mother-in-law glared at me sternly. Both my husband and my father-in-law tried to intervene and calm my mother-in-law down, but her anger only grew. It's because we have an extra person here that the house is struggling financially. Being a housewife is essentially the same as being unemployed. Do you understand? With those words, my mother-in-law blamed me. However, more than feeling sad or angry, I just felt tired of my mother-in-law. It's been a year since I started living with my in-laws, and I've been blamed like this by her many times before. My dedication to my family at home is something my mother-in-law just can't seem to accept. I believe that maintaining the household is an important role and is certainly not worthless. But the reality is that my mother-in-law does not see its value. It's incredibly frustrating that such misunderstandings occur, but I strongly feel that I must overcome this situation in my own way. One day, my mother-in-law was different from usual. Apparently, something upsetting happened outside, and because of that, she was even harsher towards me than usual. As time passed, my mother-in-law became more agitated and eventually said something unbelievable. "It's wrong that you're with my precious son. You're unemployed now, and you should live a more independent life. Get out now." My husband and father-in-law were shocked. They had not expected my mother-in-law to tell me to leave so directly and were at a loss for words. My father-in-law seemed like he wanted to say something, but I spoke up first. "Oh, of course, with pleasure," I replied with a smile as bright as the morning sun. My mother-in-law was taken aback by my unexpected response and exclaimed in surprise, "What?" The atmosphere was so comical, like a scene from a TV show. My husband and father-in-law were also surprised. Their faces were filled with the pure astonishment of children seeing a rare animal. While they were unsure how to react to my unexpected move, I went back to my room and began packing my bags for a new beginning. As if to mark the start of this new chapter, I took out the divorce papers. When it was time for my husband to sign the divorce papers, he hesitated slightly, and his hand shook a bit with the pen. "Mother, I'll take these divorce papers to the court." "Take care of yourself," I said as I prepared myself to step into a new future. As I did, my mother-in-law's laughter came from the back of the house, but my heart had already moved on from the past and was filled with hope for the future. "It won't go as you think," I muttered to myself as I began to envision my new life. "My name's Sherry. Even now at 30, my love for movies and dramas since childhood hasn't faded. I was passionate about following the stories on the screen back then, and narrating stories through visuals has become my passion. This passion led me to a film production school right after graduating from high school. The knowledge and skills I acquired there became a great asset in my career in the advertising industry, where I joined an advertising agency. Though busy, my days were filled with the joy of creativity. And during those days, through my work, I met Jem. He was 2 years older than me, and I was immediately drawn to his relaxed demeanor and generous heart. Sharing our love for cameras together was a special joy. On the common ground of video, we quickly built a close relationship. Our relationship naturally deepened over several years of dating, and eventually, a significant word from him reached me. "Sherry, I think I'll go back to my hometown and become an independent photographer." "Really? You've decided to become independent?" I had heard from Jim before that he eventually wanted to return to his hometown and become independent. "Yeah. So, would you come back to my hometown with me? I mean, would you marry me?" His inquiry revealed both his determination for the future and a hint of anxiety. Of course, thank you. I accepted his offer with genuine joy. Since Jem's hometown is accessible by train from here, I will be quitting my job at my current company. Deciding to follow him, even at the cost of leaving my job, came with its share of loneliness and anxiety. But the overwhelming sense of anticipation and hope filled my heart to support the dreams of the person I love and to carve out a new future together. Our new story is about to begin. The time I spend with Jim is so precious to me, it's indescribable. Our marriage has led to daily appreciation of our joy together. And I became a full-time homemaker while Jim began to build a new career with his camera. He worked hard. We rented an apartment near his parents' home and saved money to build our own house in the future. Living modestly, our dreams slowly but surely took shape. However, a suggestion from my mother-in-law disturbed our peaceful daily life. "Sherry, Jem, it's wonderful that you two are saving diligently for the future. But if you live here with us, you could save even more," my mother-in-law said, her eyes gleaming like a child dreaming. Although we had a good relationship with my in-laws, this proposal swirled complex emotions within us. It might be financially beneficial indeed. But, recalling the struggles of a friend who lived with in-laws immediately after marriage and ended up divorcing, I felt uneasy. Jim, sensing my feelings, gently refused, saying, "Mom, I appreciate it, but we value our privacy too. We'd like to think more about living together." However, my mother-in-law's enthusiasm did not wane. "I think living together will make every day more fun. I dream every night of us enjoying meals together." "It's time to start living together," she repeatedly suggested. As time passed, her repeated suggestions swayed us. Eventually, we accepted her warm hope. The joy on my mother-in-law's face was as if a long-held dream had come true. Finally, my dream is becoming reality." She thanked us with sparkling eyes. Our new life, filled with such hopeful anticipation, was about to begin. "Wow, I'm really happy. Sherry, let's share the household chores together amicably." "Thank you, I look forward to it." Seeing my mother-in-law smile, I felt truly glad to have accepted living together. After agreeing to live together, my mother-in-law's calls became more frequent, conveying her eagerness to live together. "For you two, I've prepared the corner room on the second floor of the house. It's bright as it gets a lot of sunlight, and I think you'll find it comfortable. I've cleaned the room thoroughly and polished it, so please use it comfortably. I truly appreciate your thoughtfulness. I'm deeply grateful." As time passed, I experienced more of my mother-in-law's kind gestures, and the anxiety in my heart gradually eased. Still, a small doubt smoldered deep within me. It was the feeling that my mother-in-law's love for her son, Jim, was sometimes too intense. A mother's love for her son is natural, but sometimes her overprotectiveness perplexed me. "Sherry, what are you making for dinner tonight?" "Jem works hard every day, so make sure he eats lots of nutritious food. Not just meat, but a balanced diet. Support him well." "So, what's on the menu?" While I appreciated her detailed concern, I couldn't help but feel a slight discomfort. My mother-in-law also began to frequently say, "I can't wait to live with Jim soon." Her words seemed to anticipate living with Jim more than with the entire family. However, a mother's desire to cherish time with her son is understandable. I told myself not to worry excessively. Otherwise, there were no other concerns, so I focused on preparing for the move. And so, our life together began. Initially, sharing household chores with my mother-in-law led to harmonious days, but gradually her unexpected side began to show. One day, with Jim and my father-in-law at work, it was just my mother-in-law and me at home. As morning light streamed through the windows, what should have been a peaceful time suddenly changed. "Sherry, are you still doing laundry? Can't you do it quicker? Once the laundry is done, I'd like you to wash the dishes. I'm leaving the housework to you today. Since you're not working, you must have plenty of time, right? How enviable to have so much free time." My mother-in-law asked in a tone harsher than I'd ever heard. Surprised, yet trying to remain calm, I replied, "Mother, do you have plans to go out today?" However, my mother-in-law responded, "Yes, unlike you, I'm busy. When I was working, every day was very busy." Thinking back to those times still fills my chest. She spoke with pride about her past job. My mother-in-law indeed had a successful career at a major trading company until 2 years ago. She is now a retired housewife and supposed to have a lot of time at home. Yet, why does she look down on me as unemployed? I couldn't understand the reason and couldn't hide my confusion. What are you spacing out for? Move your hands. Hurry up and finish hanging the laundry. Yes, yes. Overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's forcefulness, I started doing the household chores as she commanded. My mother-in-law complained about every aspect of the housework, and she wasn't satisfied unless the cleaning was perfect. This isn't good enough. It's not clean at all. Do it again. She watched with a critical eye. After harassing me to her satisfaction, my mother-in-law left the house with a designer bag in hand. Alone in the house, I was stunned. Gradually, it became a daily routine for my mother-in-law to naturally treat housework as my responsibility. She dressed in trendy clothes and bags, and always returned from her outings with new purchases. When Jim or my father-in-law were around, my mother-in-law acted like the perfect wife and mother straight out of a magazine. Meanwhile, I struggled internally with whether to tell Jim or my father-in-law about my mother-in-law's dual nature. Not wanting to cause them unnecessary worry, I eventually chose to remain silent. However, as time passed, even in gatherings with the family, my mother-in-law openly pushed household chores onto me. Even then, Jim always protected me and spoke up against my mother-in-law. "Mom, why do you always make Sherry do the chores?" We agreed to share them. My mother-in-law responded, "Don't be so mad. It's natural for Sherry to handle the chores since she spends time at home," as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Finally, my father-in-law showed his anger. "You aren't working right now either." My father-in-law is 3 years younger than my mother-in-law, making him 59 years old. He is still actively working, despite being close to retirement, and works at a publishing company. He is a person full of kindness and has always been warm to me. Moreover, when it's just the two of us, my mother-in-law often talks about her past glories and her career at a major trading company. She probably doesn't talk about it when the family is around because she doesn't want to hear, "You aren't working now, are you?" It seemed she was proud of her past and felt some superiority because I am a housewife. My mother-in-law enthusiastically repeated stories of her past. "Listen, right after graduating from that famous university, I worked at a top company and was really making a mark even as a newcomer. I was so relied upon, and the number of times I was awarded is countless," she said, and I replied, "That's truly wonderful." However, my response only emboldened her to say, "See, you wouldn't understand because you haven't lived a glamorous life like mine. You're perfectly suited for being unemployed because you don't have any special skills." She often looked down on me like that. Although these words irritated me inside, I felt consoled by the fact that my husband and father-in-law were on my side. While my mother-in-law was around, I quickly finished my chores and retreated to my room, reducing the time I spent with her as much as possible. I tried not to pay attention to her boastful stories, and sometimes, when it seemed like she would go on for a long time, I cleverly found excuses to escape back to my room. Recently, I've been quickly retreating to my room as soon as she starts, and even if she seems dissatisfied, I just keep calm. Then, one evening, almost a year after we started living together, my mother-in-law suddenly began talking discontentedly about a luxurious trip her friend, Mrs. Johnson, had. Today, Mrs. Johnson bragged to me. "Mrs. Johnson is your friend, right?" Jim asked. My mother-in-law nodded and began speaking bluntly. The Johnsons went on a fancy trip. They had a private outdoor jacuzzi accessible directly from their room, and the food was exquisite. Listening to this exchange, I simply took the role of a listener. "Is that so?" "I'm envious," my father-in-law commented calmly. To this, my mother-in-law exploded. "Did you hear that?" She bragged about it to me. It felt like she said, "You guys couldn't afford that fancy inn," and it really hurt me. "Why do I have to feel this sad?" she complained. Jim gently said, "Mom, take a deep breath. There's no need to feel so burdened." But my mother-in-law wouldn't listen. "No, you don't understand my feelings. This is the first time I've felt so sad and frustrated." She became furious and suddenly turned her frustration towards me. "The reason our household is struggling financially is because someone isn't employed, you know?" She blamed me. Jim immediately retorted, "Mom, what are you talking about?" But my mother-in-law's anger did not subside. "There's a dead weight here. Don't you have anything to say? Do you realize being a housewife is the same as being unemployed?" She confronted me. Hearing those words, I couldn't hold back any longer. Angry that she, now unemployed herself, was treating me like an unemployed burden, I was at my limit. "You're not working now either, are you?" I counted. "What?" She seemed surprised by my response and then became even angrier. "It's wrong that you're with my precious son. You're unemployed now and you should live a more independent life. Get out now." she yelled. Both my father-in-law and Jim tried to reason with her, but I asserted my position calmly yet firmly. Yes, gladly, I responded cheerfully. At that moment, surprise spread across my mother-in-law's face, and she exclaimed, "What?" Jim and my father-in-law were also taken aback by my unexpected reply. Smiling inwardly at their reactions, I quickly stood up, cleared my dishes from the table, and took the first step towards my new life. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law taunted me. "Look, she really is leaving. Jim, you're lucky to get rid of a wife like that." But Jim got angry and scolded her. "Stop it, Mom." My father-in-law also supported me, saying, "You should apologize to Sherry," but my mother-in-law stubbornly refused to apologize. I quietly packed my belongings without anyone interrupting me. Jim watched me anxiously as I left the room. At the last moment, my mother-in-law still seemed to want to say something. "Hey, you, wash your dishes." "And ours too." I naturally ignored her, but I could hear Jim and my father-in-law scolding her throughout the house. The next morning, after I had finished packing, I told Jim something in my room. Then Jim and I quietly signed the divorce papers. "Mother, this is goodbye. I will submit the divorce papers," I said calmly. As I left my in-laws' home, I heard my mother-in-law's laughter behind me, but I was satisfied with my decision and left with a smile. My mother-in-law had no idea what was about to happen to her. "It won't go as you think," I muttered to myself as I opened the door to my new life. Then, as I had declared, I submitted the divorce papers to the courthouse, and thus Jim and I were later on officially divorced. 6 months later, my mother-in-law unexpectedly called my mobile phone. As soon as I answered, she started talking excitedly. "I finally got through. I've been trying to reach you for so long. Why haven't I been able to reach you lately?" she demanded. "Well, I had blocked your calls. We're strangers now," I replied calmly. To be honest, I had blocked her calls to cut off contact with her. I had just unblocked her shortly before. Call blocking? Anyway, listen. I can't find Jim. Where have you hidden my precious Jim? Are you involved in this? Even though you're divorced, do you still have feelings for Jim? She pressed vehemently. Hearing my mother-in-law's voice after a long time, she seemed as lively as ever. "Could you please lower your voice a bit? It's hurting my ears. Be quiet. Where are you now?" She continued to shout emotionally despite my caution. In stark contrast to her, I informed her calmly. "I've built a house and just finished moving in." "What?" Her momentum was halted suddenly, and she quieted down, but then she gathered her thoughts and started yelling again. "What are you talking about? How can you, an unemployed person, have the money for that? A house? Sure, you said something about saving for a home, but there's no way a single, unemployed person like you could afford to build a house. I earn $160,000 a year." The fact I revealed made my mother-in-law gasp in surprise, even over the phone. "Actually, I've started streaming videos. I'm a YouTuber now, promoting beauty products and trendy items. I've become popular, and my annual income has reached $160,000, I explained calmly. "YouTuber, you? And you earn that much?" My mother-in-law could not hide her astonishment. "Yes, that's why I stayed in my room. I was focusing on making videos," I added. Of course, it was also to distance myself from my mother-in-law, but since resigning and marrying Jim, I had been deeply engaged in video production, utilizing my editing skills. It had been quite successful from the start, but I never thought I'd earn this much. "So, that's it? You were always holed up in your room making videos?" "Well, yes, for making videos." While escaping from my mother-in-law's bragging was a bigger reason for staying in my room, indeed, I wanted to find as much time as possible for video production. "What? That's sly of you. If you were earning so much, you should have told me sooner. I feel terrible. I thought you were just an unemployed nobody and said such awful things. If you're earning that much, it's a different story. You're so mean for keeping such a big secret, Sherry." The moment she learned about my income, my mother-in-law's tone changed as if she had flipped a switch. "If you're earning that much, you should give me something too. A fancy hotel trip would be nice," she said. I took a deep breath and replied gently, "Unfortunately, I earned that money. It's mine. Please use the money you earned at your own prestigious trading company." "What? To think you earn so much and still be so stingy." My mother-in-law expressed her dissatisfaction, but I was no longer moved by her words. It surprised me a little. The person who always used harsh words on me was then demanding things so casually. But somewhere in my mind, I thought, that's typical of her, I suppose. To be honest, I have no intention of giving you a single penny. Also, there's the matter with Jim. We are living together now. Wait, what? I thought you two were divorced. Her voice was filled with surprise. Yes, we did separate once, but we remarried. Jim decided to come live in my house this time. We had made that arrangement originally. Really? He moved into your house. The day we left my mother-in-law's house, Jim and I seriously discussed our future. We planned to divorce once, but then Jim would come to my house and we'd start anew. Jim felt very relieved knowing that I wanted to be with him. I'll be staying at my parents' house for a while. I've already talked to them, so Jim, come over when you're ready. Okay, I understand. I really feel sorry for Mom. Jim looked a bit sad, but, along with my father-in-law, always protected me. So, I truly appreciated both of them. Then, Jim lied to my mother-in-law about having a long-term job and came to my house with just the necessities. My mother-in-law was unable to accept what I had told her. Every time I called Jim, it doesn't connect. Could it be, is Jim avoiding my calls too? Why? My mother-in-law was puzzled. Yes, that's correct. Jim decided to distance himself from you. I also used to avoid your calls, but I've unblocked them since we've settled down after moving. I thought you might be worried about Jim, so I wanted to let you know about him. And oh, sorry, but I can't give you our address. We've decided to stay together, so there's no need for you to look for him, I explained in a slightly softer tone. My mother-in-law seemed shocked and stuttered. What? That's... She then suddenly shouted, it's all lies. You must have done something. A bit bewildered in front of such a mother-in-law, Jim then appeared and calmly took the phone. Mom, it's me, he started with a gentle voice. Jim, see, it must be a misunderstanding, right? Did Sherry do something to you? I'll come pick you up, just tell me where you are. My mother-in-law pleaded desperately, but Jim quietly responded. No, what Sherry is saying is true. We've decided to cut ties with you, Mom. I cannot forgive you for how you had treated her. From now on, you're a stranger to us. I'm sorry. Goodbye. The phone was then handed back to me. Mother, do you understand Jim's feelings now? She stammered. Well, I'm going to hang up now then, I said, and just as I was about to end the call, my mother-in-law suddenly exclaimed, Wait. I'll accept that we're cutting ties for now. But I still have something to say. Please reconsider the money just one more time. I was utterly baffled that she was still talking about money at this point. I'm really sorry, my mother-in-law, but we can't give you any more money. It's impossible, especially the fancy hotel reservation you mentioned. So, please understand that, I explained as kindly yet clearly as possible. No, you see, here's the situation. I was enjoying a little shopping with your father's credit card, and it got out, and now I'm limited to a monthly allowance of $300. It disappears in no time. Oh, really? So, that's what happened, huh? He did recently mention being worried about the decrease in savings. He saw you coming home from high-end brand shops, so we had a little chat about it. Perhaps that was it. Jem and I always kept in touch with his father, so we knew his concerns well. My father-in-law is truly kind and even helped us with the expenses to start our new life because his wife caused trouble. And lately, he's been worried about the rapidly decreasing savings, so I provided a bit of information about my mother-in-law's shopping habits. Despite not working, she frequently came home with shopping bags from branded stores, which seemed odd to me. Did you snitch on me to him? Why? He's really angry, has put me on a meager allowance, and insists I record everything. If I don't comply, he's threatening to divorce me. Mother, overspending isn't good, especially without an income. You should appreciate even getting an allowance of $300 a month. You should be grateful to your husband and reflect on your actions, I responded, albeit exasperated, wanting to hear what excuses she might have. I used to be able to buy whatever I wanted, but suddenly having to save after retiring is confusing. When I go shopping with friends, I have to pick something decent, or it looks bad compared to them. Do you really need to put on such appearances? I asked. To that, my mother-in-law responded as if it were the most natural thing. It's not just for show. I used to work at an elite general trading company. That's why branded products suit me. I don't have anything else to discuss with you, Mother. I'm hanging up now. Listening to her incomprehensible claim gave me a headache. With that, I ended the call. As I hung up, I thought I heard my mother-in-law's frustrated voice. Later, my father-in-law told me that my mother-in-law was feeling quite stressed about the new financial arrangement. My mother-in-law had secretly been using my father-in-law's credit card to make expensive purchases. When he found out, he brought up divorce. My mother-in-law cried and begged for forgiveness, but my father-in-law was resolute and did not accept her pleas. Eventually, my mother-in-law had to leave the house and start living in a much simpler apartment. From a life of luxury, she began looking for part-time jobs. However, working under a much younger supervisor became a significant challenge for her, who has high self-esteem. I received several calls from her asking for financial help and complaining about her job. "Sherry, listen. This young supervisor keeps criticizing what I do. Don't do unnecessary things," he says. How cheeky is that? It's obvious if he just look at my experience. I'd rather you don't call me anymore. But my mother-in-law, endeared, continued, "Come on, help me out a little. Just lend me some money, a small amount will do. You can afford it, right? No, please stop this." When I refused, my mother-in-law started crying dramatically. "That's terrible, Sherry. I can't stand this life anymore. I was supposed to enjoy a fun retirement. Why has it turned out like this? That's your own fault. Until you understand that, nothing will change. Please don't call me anymore." I hung up and blocked my mother-in-law's number again. I don't know what happened to my mother-in-law afterward, but I hope she reflects on her past and changes her ways a little. Meanwhile, my video streaming has been successfully profitable, and together with Jim, we are getting a new business off the ground and securing a stable income. With our savings so far, we are relatively comfortable financially. Also, a new life has begun within me. Our upcoming child is already being blessed by my father-in-law and our families. Jem and I are enjoying our days, preparing to welcome our new family member. I am Courtney. I have a husband named John, who is 2 years younger than me. His carelessness often troubles me. Our relationship began when I was 27 years old and met John at a matchmaking party. At that time, we were both seeking a life partner. My previous boyfriends had been indifferent to marriage or were financially struggling, but John was different. While we were dating, he would carry my bags and often treat me to meals, always being kind. However, I later realized that he had been doing the same things for his sister, Wendy, so his actions with women had become habitual. After we got married, John's attitude remained the same, but his priorities changed. It became more apparent than when we were dating. I had thought he was especially kind only to me. John's family includes his mother and his sister. His father is still alive, but several years ago, after a fierce dispute between his parents, they got divorced, leaving his mother living alone at home. Consequently, his mother frequently visits our apartment. I'm struggling financially. Your father has abandoned me, and I don't know what to do. Please, John, come back home. How can I manage alone, dear? She pleaded with tears in her eyes. Moved by her tearful appeal, John repeatedly suggested to me, "What do you think about us living with my mom at her family home?" Indeed, his mother is unemployed and has no income. She might have received some property settlement at the time of the divorce, but she struggles with living and house maintenance expenses. Previously, there was no concern when John lived with his mother, but since our marriage and his moving out, she has been alone. John pleaded with me almost daily, saying, "There's plenty of room at my parents' house, and I don't intend to burden you with household chores. Won't you consider living together?" Moreover, he tearfully appealed to me, "Courtney, please think of helping this frail old woman." I was surprised to hear him describe her as frail. Realizing how difficult their living situation was, I became concerned about my mother-in-law. Thus, I reluctantly decided to live with her. When I agreed, John and his mother hugged each other happily. While I thought living together might not be bad if it made them happy, deep down, I wished to enjoy newlywed life just with John. Thus, despite being newlyweds, we started living in his mother's house. Both John and I work, but honestly, John wasn't particularly skilled at his job. His goal was to master his favorite burger and open his own burger shop. He was apprenticing at a burger shop while working. I admired his pursuit of this dream, but it seemed to have reduced his time for family. In the first month, his mother thanked us for living together. However, as we got busy with work, she started considering the house her territory during the day and began treating me rudely. "Hey, Courtney, please don't put plastic bottles in that trash can. How have you been living all this time? I can't believe you can't even sort garbage. What exactly did your parents teach you? My mother-in-law scolded me. I just replied, I'm sorry, at that time. I am not ignorant. Despite her insistence on proper sorting, I didn't know which trash bin at her house was for what kind of waste. When we moved into my in-laws' house, a fair amount of garbage came out while unpacking. I tried to sort them accordingly. When I asked my mother-in-law how to sort the waste, she said, "Don't worry about it, I'll sort it out later." Yet, she complains every time I dispose of a plastic bottle but says nothing when John does the same. I do sort the garbage on collection days. I began to feel this was more than just nagging. Furthermore, she demanded I do more housework, even though it's impossible for me to prepare lunch while working. I firmly told my mother-in-law it's impossible. Then she insisted, "Don't say impossible. As a daughter-in-law, you should comply with my requests." This attitude surprised and disappointed me. Who was it that tearfully begged us to live together? Coming here was likely a bad deal. Probably, her real intention was to secure financial support from her son. An unwanted daughter-in-law was just an obstacle. While I was struggling with my relationship with my mother-in-law, I received news from my company about starting remote work. It was deemed less stressful and more efficient than commuting. However, this remote work was optional, not mandatory for all employees. It seemed like the company was gathering some examples to consider a full-scale implementation. I started working from home, thinking it would enable me to prepare lunch, as my mother-in-law had repeatedly requested. But even after preparing meals and managing housework, her attitude didn't improve. Instead, she began to express her dissatisfaction about my presence at home, saying, "If only my daughter-in-law weren't here, the atmosphere of the house wouldn't have turned so bad. I'm really fed up with this." Her words hurt me. Doing housework here felt like a greater burden than normal. Particularly, John is sloppy, not sorting garbage or taking care of his laundry. It's always me who has to gather his laundry from his room. Yet, he takes this for granted and often complains. "Why can't I find my favorite socks? They're just hung out to dry." "What? I plan to wear them today." "You're too late with the laundry. You should try harder at housework." He calmly expressed his dissatisfaction like this. I don't understand why I am being blamed when the real problem is John not doing his laundry. His words were shocking. Furthermore, his mother, agreeing with John, also criticized me. "That's right. Courtney is always at home, so why can't she manage the household chores properly?" she rebuked. It felt like they were mocking me. I was astounded by how they thought our current living standard was maintained. In addition to this, unbelievable words came from my mother-in-law and John. Now that Wendy is coming back, having such an inept daughter-in-law will be embarrassing. I can't imagine what she'll think. Certainly, Wendy has become quite responsible. If she finds out how clumsy my wife is, she'll probably mock me. I hadn't been informed about Wendy's return. I only found out through their conversation. Wendy is John's biological sister and my sister-in-law. She got married 2 years ago and currently lives with her husband. I haven't talked much with Wendy, but from the attitudes of my mother-in-law and John, I felt like she also looks down on me. I was disappointed, wondering if there's anyone reasonable in this house. On the day of Wendy's arrival, my mother-in-law was excited. Wendy came in with her suitcase, sat down on the living room sofa, and said, "There's nothing like being at home." I offered her some drink, but surprisingly, she asked, "Who is this person?" As if she didn't know me, despite attending my wedding with John. I should have told her I was John's wife, but my mother-in-law spoke before I could. "Listen, Wendy, this is John's wife. She can't handle household chores properly, always has a tense expression, and never does anything right. She used to work, but now she just stays at home," my mother-in-law said in front of me. I was shocked. I haven't quit my job. I switched to remote work, considering our family situation. Despite explaining this to John and my mother-in-law beforehand, it seemed she hadn't listened at all. Wendy seemed to believe her mother's story. "What? An unemployed person in the house? Why would you keep such a person? She's the type who won't understand until she experiences hardship. She said that while laughing mockingly. My mother-in-law agreed, indeed. Then she turned to me. Listen, Courtney. You should know Wendy is pregnant and wants to give birth at home. I was taken aback, as this was news to me. I wasn't informed about her return or her pregnancy. It seemed they had discussed it already, but I was completely out of the loop. Even though there is a spare room, the arrival of a pregnant woman in the house will surely add to the financial burden. Yet, nobody had informed me about this in advance. This situation itself was surprising, but what my mother-in-law said next was even more shocking. Wendy is coming back for her pregnancy. So jobless, like you should get out. We don't need someone without an income in this house. Get out before Wendy comes back with her things. If you don't pack up, I'll throw away all your belongings. She declared. Stunned, I had to ask, are you serious? Honestly, I felt relieved at the thought of leaving. It's much better to live on my own terms than to be mistreated by this family. The ones who will be troubled by my absence should be my mother-in-law, John, and the returning Wendy. Yet, as if not understanding her own situation, my mother-in-law said, we'll have no problem without you. Then, I shall leave this house. I was fed up with being looked down upon by my mother-in-law and Wendy and John's concurrence. John, who was always ladies first in front of his sister and mother, showed indifference to me, always prioritizing them. Maybe during our dates, he was attentive to me just because he used to prioritize his sister and mother back home. But since we started living with his mother, all his kindness was directed towards her, and I received none. Perhaps I was just a supporter for him to realize his dreams, good only for providing money. I immediately contacted a certain person. To that person, I first said, I'm breaking up with John, so please collect the rent from him or his mother from now on. When they asked why, I explained that I was ordered to leave the house because Wendy was coming back for childbirth. They responded with an apology. I'm really sorry, and assured, leave the future arrangements to me. Afterward, I stayed in a hotel for a while, searching for a place to live alone. During this time, I received frantic calls from John. What do you mean by divorcing? And what's this about repayment? I thought we were doing well. Doing well? You kick out your wife for your sister, and you ask what's wrong? I retorted. Kicked out? What are you talking about? Didn't you decide to leave yourself so Wendy wouldn't be stressed during her stay? John said. It seemed like my mother-in-law and Wendy had convinced him that I left on my own accord. However, the truth was different. I left because I was told I'd be thrown out with all my belongings if I didn't. I had to escape with my stuff, fearing what might happen if I stayed, I explained. I had thought John would never know the truth about me being expelled by his mother and sister, but to think he actually believed I left on my own accord, that shocked me. By the way, did your father come to the house? Huh? Yeah, he did. I didn't quite get it. He mentioned something about rent, but we own the house, so there's no rent to pay. At that moment, I couldn't help but exclaim loudly, What? Did you forget the explanation when we moved in? When your parents got divorced, the house was in your father's name. But your mother refused to leave. In the end, it was rented out for $2,000 a month. Really? He was surprised. Yes. Your mother was supposed to pay the rent monthly as part of the property division. But when she couldn't pay, we were asked to live together and pay the rent. But I've never paid any rent. He said. That made sense. John's income was low because he spent a lot of time training at the burger shop. Thus, I had been covering the $2,000 rent. I used to give it directly to his mother, who then made the payment from her bank account. I had informed them about this at the beginning of our cohabitation. I was appalled that his mother had forgotten that I was paying the rent. It's clear I've been paying $2,000 every month. But now that we're separating, I won't pay for that house anymore. What? John sounded shocked. That's why I informed your father. Since I won't be paying anymore, your mother should get the money from you. He came to talk about this today. Hearing this, John was flustered, but I couldn't understand why he was so perturbed. John, who was so absorbed in his training and considerate towards his mother, leaving me without kindness, now acted like a victim. I realized once again what a terrible family they were. Anyway, your father should have received the divorce papers I filled out. Make sure you pay up. Wait, what is this promissory note about? John asked. I sighed. Why does he so easily forget important things? That promissory note is something you suggested, remember? You said, I'll work hard to pursue my dream. So, I'll leave the household finances to you. I'll calculate and repay all the excess payments later. That's why I made the promissory note. Oh, did I say that? John said that in a small, uncertain voice. Has he finally remembered? He seemed to have forgotten what he once promised. I'm moving forward with the divorce. I can't afford to wait for your dream to come true. If we hadn't lived together, you wouldn't have gone so overboard. Paying $2,000 in rent plus the living expenses for 3 people every month was an unnecessary expense. The rent and living expenses of our previous apartment weren't that high, but living in John's family home had driven up costs. Therefore, the amount John owed me kept increasing. Please, don't divorce me. I have no one but you. He pleaded. What? I don't need a husband like you. Someone who doesn't pay, neglects housework, doesn't cherish his wife, and disregards family. I don't need such a husband. If you don't want to submit the divorce papers, shall we discuss it through a lawyer? I said and hung up the phone. Later, John apparently lashed out at his mother and Winnie for the first time. Why did you do something to drive Courtney out? Because of you, I can't pursue my dream and am now buried in debt. He yelled. His mother and Wendy were scolded by John for the first time, with Wendy in tears and his mother in shock. Despite this situation, John's father firmly declared, if you can't make the financial payments, leave this house by the end of the month. He threatened to call the police if they were still there next month, leaving them scrambling to pack. Wendy's husband came to pick her up, learning everything from his father-in-law and reprimanding her for her shameful behavior. Meanwhile, John and his mother were forced to live in a shabby apartment. Their current living situation is drastically different from before, and both are struggling. John has quit his apprenticeship at the burger shop to work hard and earn money, taking on 2 part-time jobs to make the payments to me. His mother, told by John to earn the living expenses, is working multiple part-time jobs to cover the rent and living expenses for the 2 of them. It seems they are having a hard time now, after living an easy life before. I feel they finally get their just desserts. The thought of being free from their exploitation makes me feel like my life is brightening up. Determined to reclaim the time I lost, I've decided to pursue my happiness from now on. How much do you want? We're willing to pay, so let's settle this. The reason I panicked was because the moment I entered the hospital room, she said words I'd never expected. Wait, what? Mia, are you serious about what you just said? Yes, I am. Explain yourself. They treated us so terribly, it almost led to a major tragedy. It was clear they were mocking us. After doing something so terrible, they want to settle with money? I can't accept a settlement. Mia, take responsibility properly. That's unbelievable. You're as stubborn as ever. You don't know what might happen if you make us angry. Don't push it. Suppressing my anger, I continued to argue with this brazen and shameless couple. I think we've heard enough. My husband intervened in the argument. I had never seen such a frightening expression on my husband's face before. Mia, you've always believed that money can solve everything since high school. You haven't changed. Everyone wants money, right? Am I wrong? That's right. As long as you have money, you can solve anything. Even this woman will shut up if you give her money. Facing the couple, my husband said, if that's the case, let's see if we can really settle this with money. Mia and her husband were overwhelmed by my husband's suggestion, but in the end, they left the hospital room with some provoking words. As Mia said, maybe everyone does want money. Money brings us happiness and joy, like magic. It's the only thing with such magical power in this world. But, as my husband said, there are things money can't solve or buy. Along with their attempt to almost kill me and my baby, they would soon understand this whether they like it or not. I am Susan Johnson. I'm 32 years old and 9 months pregnant. My husband Kevin, also 32, eagerly awaits the birth of our child. To celebrate this momentous occasion, we wanted to share our joy quietly, but it wasn't going to be easy, because there was someone who didn't like the fact that we were going to have a child. That person was none other than Mia, a high school acquaintance and a fellow mother, who always managed to meddle in my life. Mia, who was a senior to both me and my husband during high school, came from a wealthy family that owned a big company. She was beautiful, excelled academically and athletically, and was like the idol of our school. But being pampered by her parents from a young age made her extremely selfish. She misunderstood that she could get anything with money, and so she had a bad reputation. Despite this, she was interested in Kevin and used both force and money to try to make him her boyfriend. However, Kevin was not interested in her and always cared for me. So I became his girlfriend instead of Mia. She didn't like Kevin choosing me, and from then on, she saw me as a rival. You and Kevin don't match. Break up with him now. But, Mia, that's too much. Kevin, you know I'm more beautiful than Susan, and I have money. Please stop, Mia. Don't say things like that. We were tormented by Mia's harsh words and money throughout high school. I consulted with teachers multiple times, but even they couldn't stand up to Mia's financial power, and the situation remained unresolved. After Mia graduated, we avoided her as much as possible, not wanting to provoke her. We lost contact with her for a while. Several years later, Mia unexpectedly reappeared in our lives and confronted us. Oh, Susan and Kevin. I haven't seen you in a while, but it looks like you've built a decent life despite being poor. Mia had also gotten married and had kids. Her family flaunted luxury brands and drove expensive cars. She continued her high school ways, using her wealth to control her fellow mothers, even possibly giving them money as allowance. Many of them declined, but they were tempted by the money and ended up accepting it. In exchange for the money, they had to do whatever Mia asked. Then Mia, using the mom friend she had paid off, began to harass us. Susan, your fashion sense has always been lacking, hasn't it? Has Kevin never really bought you any decent clothes since the old days? Can you stop parading on the main street like you own it? You should walk down the side streets. This isn't a place for people like you. Here, take some money and have lunch at some family restaurant or diner. Mia would criticize our appearance and actions like this, flaunt her money, and continue to harass us just like in high school. The more you react to people like that, the more they want to annoy you. So, just ignore her and she'll probably stop someday. I initially wanted to argue with my husband's advice, but soon accepted his words. Indeed, as my husband said, it was evident that people like Mia escalated their harassment when they got a reaction. Together with my husband, we dealt with Mia's provocations with minimal interaction and ensured that her words didn't affect us. One day, I found out I was pregnant, the moment I shared the news with my husband. He was overjoyed, ready to take on his role as a father with pride and do his best for our child. Inspired by my husband's determination, I also mustered the courage to live proudly as a mother and as a person. I hoped for peaceful days without Mia's harassment. But reality was not so kind. One day, 9 months into my pregnancy, I encountered Mia while returning from shopping with my visibly swollen belly. Oh, Susan, you've gotten so fat since the last time I saw you. What have you been eating to look so embarrassing? Huh? This isn't because I've gained weight. I'm pregnant. It's natural. If you have no business with me, could you please be quiet? Apparently angered by my response, Mia stood in my way. You might have a bigger belly now, but it seems your attitude has grown too. How dare someone poor and plain like you get pregnant? You're really pushing my buttons. I don't care what you think, Mia. I just want to have my child in peace. I tried to defuse the situation, but it only angered Mia further. Excuse me, Susan? Is that how you speak to me? As I tried to walk away, Mia chased after me, attempting to grab my arm. In the ensuing commotion, her right arm struck my belly hard. The impact made me fall, and a sharp pain radiated from my abdomen. In agony, I hurriedly took out my phone from my bag and called my husband, barely managing to say, "The baby. What should I do?" before I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I realized I was in a hospital bed. Feeling warm under an electric blanket with N4 drip in my arm, I heard familiar voices nearby. As I turned, I saw my close friends, Olivia and Emma, sitting beside me. "Why are you here?" "Oh, is my baby okay?" "Don't move, Susan. You need to rest." I tried to sit up but was stopped by the sharp pain in my belly. Olivia and Emma tried to help me lay down, and that's when I noticed my belly had shrunk. A nurse informed me that I had gone into premature labor shortly after losing consciousness, and they had performed an emergency C-section. The baby was in an incubator due to being premature but was thankfully healthy. My husband, sensing the urgency of my call, had rushed over. He'd been informed of what had transpired by Olivia, Emma, and the attending doctor, and was livid. At that time, following Olivia and Emma's advice to get plenty of rest, I decided to focus on my recovery so I could see the baby as soon as possible. However, the next day, an unexpected pair visited my hospital room. Mia and her husband, Matt. "Mia, how audacious of you. Just to be sure, why are you here?" Olivia and Emma stared sternly at the couple. However, the two of them approached my bed as if they didn't even see them. How audacious of them to just barge into my room without knocking, especially after what they did to me. I felt so disgusted that I couldn't help but twist my face in repulsion. Then, the rude couple suddenly threw out an unbelievable proposition. "We'll be straightforward. How much do you want?" "Excuse me? How much do you want?" "I'm offering to pay, so let's settle this." The moment they stepped into the room and uttered those unexpected words, I panicked. "Wait, what? Mia, are you serious about what you just said?" "Yes, I am." "Explain yourself." They had been so close to causing a major tragedy, and their terrible treatment of us was evident. To suggest settling all of this with money after all they did was unthinkable. "I can't accept a settlement. Mia, take responsibility properly." But instead of listening, Mia and Matt just kept hurling insults. "That's unbelievable. You're as stubborn as ever. You don't know what might happen if you make us angry. Don't push it. It's not about being stubborn. You should stop making ridiculous claims and looking down on us." "Yeah, Mia. Have you forgotten what you did to Susan? One misstep and it could have been a much bigger problem. Susan's baby was really in her belly, and you put them in danger without thinking. And now you're offering money as if that makes everything okay? Shouldn't you be grateful? Just take the settlement before you make us even angrier. Know your place. It's like you weren't taught anything by your parents." Olivia and Emma, in agreement with me, rebuked Mia and Matt, who just grew more infuriated and let loose on not just me, but also on them. As everyone forgot they were in a hospital and argued, the door of the room slowly opened with a creak. "I understand what you're trying to say, but there's no way we're going to resolve this with money." My husband spoke with a quiet but firm voice. Olivia and Emma looked at him in surprise. Mia and Matt hadn't expected him, and his unprecedented fury made them shrink back. Seeing this side of my husband was new to me, Olivia, and Emma. We were rendered speechless by his anger. My husband went up to Mia and Matt and said with a powerful tone, "Mia, you've always believed that money can solve everything since high school. You haven't changed. Everyone wants money, right? Am I wrong? Well, everyone desires money. There are things it can't buy or problems it can't solve. This incident is indeed a prime example. And no matter how much money was offered, I couldn't accept it. Both my daughter in the incubator and I are fortunately healthy and alive, but we might have been sent to the afterlife, despite it being such a grave incident." Mia seemed to have no remorse or understanding at all. The same goes for Matt, who was sitting next to her. They probably just have that kind of mindset. Thinking this way, my anger towards them grew, and I didn't want them to suggest so casually that this matter could be resolved with money. I feel the same way as Kevin. If money could resolve everything, there would be no need to involve the police or lawyers. Let me make this clear once again. You both should take responsibility. What's with you? You're more stubborn than usual today, aren't you? Aren't you all happy if you receive money? That's right. Anything can be resolved as long as you have money. You should keep quiet if you're given some. You should know your place. Weren't you taught anything by your parents? At this point, seeing Mia and Matt rudely cursing and acting as if money was the solution to all problems, I didn't even have the energy to get angry anymore. But then, my husband, pointing at Mia and Matt, said strongly, "If you believe money can settle this, why don't we put that to a test?" Huh? What do you mean? What? Mia and Matt were taken aback by my husband's insinuation, and I was equally puzzled. Yet, with mocking expressions, Mia and Matt confronted my husband. "Are you out of your mind? What are you trying to do? Poor people like you and Susan can't do anything." Mia spat out those words and left the hospital room with Matt. "Kevin, are you sure about what you said? I'll handle everything. Don't worry, my dear. There's nothing to be concerned about." After saying that, for some reason, Kevin made eye contacts with Olivia and Emma. As if Olivia and Emma understood, they both nodded and told me reassuringly, "Don't worry." I still didn't fully understand the situation, but the stress from the confrontation was taking a toll on my post-surgery body. I wanted to avoid any further confrontations or arguments. So, I decided to rely on my husband and focus on my recovery. The next evening, Mia stormed into the hospital, her face beet red with anger. Seeing her face, it was clear she was furious. "Hey, I know you're in there. Get up and come out right now, you cowardly, tacky woman. You set this whole thing up, didn't you? I can see right through it." Nurses outside the hospital room were arguing with her as she continued to shout, her voice filled with anger. At that moment, my husband, who was on his way back from work, saw Mia causing a scene outside the hospital and calmly said to her, "What are you thinking?" Bursting into the hospital and shouting like this, "Are you out of your mind?" Mia exploded with rage at him. "I know everything. Just because of a simple disagreement, you decided to involve the police and lawyers? Susan and you orchestrated all of this, didn't you? Just because? You say strange things. For a delusional woman like you, that's probably the most effective and fitting response. What? You're being inconsiderate to the other patients. Now leave. Make your excuses at the police station." At Kevin's words, Mia's anger intensified as she tried to approach my room. However, she was stopped by the security guards who were alerted by the commotion. Her voice grew fainter, presumably as she was escorted out of the hospital. I could hear sirens and Mia's shouts outside, suggesting Kevin had reported her and the police were taking her away. That night, I received a call from Matt. "I have a request. Please don't make this situation any bigger and don't involve me anymore. I'm divorcing her. I won't do anything else to you, please." He called out of nowhere, spouting incomprehensible things and acting selfishly. If the wife is as she is, the husband is as well. I'll hear the details later. Stop bothering me with your baseless, selfish claims. After I hung up on him, I immediately blocked his number and could finally settle into the peaceful rest that followed after. Later, I learned that Kevin had close friends, among them Olivia and Emma's husbands. Coincidentally, Olivia's husband was a police officer and Emma's husband was a journalist. After the incident with Mia and Matt at the hospital, Kevin had asked for their help. They gladly agreed. Olivia and Emma also offered their assistance as they were furious at Mia's actions. First, Kevin filed an assault and injury complaint against Mia, which, thanks to the help of Olivia's police connections, led to her arrest. During the subsequent interrogation by Emma, who was a lawyer, Mia desperately tried to defend herself. However, Olivia had recorded the conversation in the hospital and presented it as evidence. With the additional eyewitness accounts of Olivia and Emma, Mia was found guilty and was ordered to pay a hefty compensation. Thanks to Emma's husband, the whole affair was published in the newspaper. As a result, not only Mia but her family also suffered a significant blow. It was revealed that her parents had embezzled company funds to cover up their daughter's misdeeds, plunging their business into crisis. As for Matt, he was acting selfishly, leveraging Mia's financial power, which made everyone have a negative impression of him. And it seemed like rumors about him spread at work. Matt was met with cold stares from his colleagues, and there were whispers about him here and there, deteriorating his relationship with his coworkers. The situation worsened further as the rumor reached the HR department. The upper management of the company began to distrust Matt, and as a result, the HR department decided to transfer Matt to another branch. Naturally, Matt and Mia got divorced. Mia was disowned by her parents, and even her children were taken away from her. Struggling with the debt from the compensation and socially isolated due to the incident, she reportedly ended up living as a homeless person in a park. Olivia and Emma saw her receiving food at a soup kitchen. On the other hand, Matt, unable to handle the isolation and gossip at work, suddenly quit. Rumors said he left on a train, but his whereabouts remained unknown. Several months after the incident, I was discharged from the hospital, and both my child and I were in excellent health. We received substantial compensation from Mia. My daughter showed no after effects and has been growing healthily. With this incident, I deepened not only my bond with my husband, but also with my friends, including Olivia and Emma. Now, peaceful days have returned to us, and we are truly happy. My name is Megan. I've been married for 10 years and am now in my early 40s. We don't have any children, but my life with my beloved husband, Kevin, is very peaceful and blissful. Kevin is a typical company employee without any major changes in his life and 5 years older than me. But since I'm working part-time, our two-person household has a reasonable amount of financial leeway, allowing us some luxuries. Our married life has been smooth without any major ups and downs. However, a minor incident started causing ripples in our tranquil daily life. This incident involved the news of my beloved father's death and inheriting his apartment. When we got married, my father started living alone in a new, modern 2-bedroom apartment he had purchased. On the other hand, Kevin and I lived in my childhood home, a 4-bedroom apartment filled with memories. This childhood home was transferred to me from my father when I got married. Before that, my father, mother, and I used to live there. When I got married, my father gave it to me with his blessings for our happiness. He suggested, "Why not start your new life in this home?" I was elated by his offer. Later on, when my father passed away, I inherited the new 2-bedroom apartment he was living in. I was very fond of that apartment, so I decided to rent it out immediately. However, one day, during a conversation with my in-laws, an unexpected suggestion came up. Sarah and her children are living in a small place. How about they move to Megan's 4-bedroom apartment? Sarah is Kevin's younger sister who was divorced and raising 3 kids. They were living in a 2-bedroom apartment, which might be a bit tight for them. But to be honest, my relationship with Sarah has not been great. Every time we met, she would make slightly sarcastic remarks about us not having children yet. Kevin and I decided to get married when we were just under 30. Since then, Sarah started to make pointed remarks. After crossing 30, her comments became even more hurtful. Remarks like, "You're already past 30 and you still have no kids?" Or "Aren't you seen as less of a woman without children?" were thrown in jest. But what shocked me the most was an incident after my beloved father passed away. Sarah said, "It's a pity you couldn't show your father the face of his grandchild." It was a moment that left me cold. Sarah is actually 3 years older than me. Instead of a younger sister-in-law, she's more like an older one. We've always tried to treat her as family and interacted with her amicably. But after such remarks, I naturally built a wall in my heart against her. I'm an only child, and my only family was my father. Amidst the grief of losing him, Sarah's words were truly shocking. Time had passed since my father's death, and I hadn't seen Sarah for a while. But out of the blue, my mother-in-law made a surprising proposal. Sarah says she'll pay $500 in rent each month. Looking at my mother-in-law's smug face, I was so shocked that I couldn't say anything. The apartment we lived in was a bit old, but we had taken good care of it, so it was still in a usable condition. There was a big shopping mall nearby, and we could easily take trains and buses. So, if we were to rent out this apartment, I thought it wouldn't go for less than $2,000 a month. But $500? I was truly surprised. Do they even understand the going rate for this area? It's unthinkable for this spacious 4-bedroom apartment's monthly rent to be just $500. Maybe they had assumed that I had agreed because I didn't say anything? My mother-in-law seemed very enthusiastic about the idea. You guys already have another apartment, right? You can just live there. Even if you don't renew the lease, later on, Sarah and the others will move there, so it's fine. How long is the contract term? Kevin was also very excited, saying, "That's really a great idea. The place where your father lived is new and lovely, and it's perfect for just the two of us." At this rate, I felt like the conversation was progressing without considering our opinions, and I started to panic. I couldn't help but blurt out, "Isn't there an option for all of us to live together in this apartment?" My in-laws' house was big and they were the only ones living there. Rooms for Kevin and Sarah are also available, so I thought it would be no problem if they moved in. After all, they've said they want to live in a bigger place. Normally, before making such moves, you would consult with your family, I think. However, moving to the in-laws would mean the kids changing schools, and they seem concerned about the hassle and cost of buying new school uniforms and gym clothes. I was hesitant to clearly express my reluctance to rent to Sarah in front of my mother-in-law, but I told her, "This place is my hometown. I can't just leave easily." I left their house that day, but my mother-in-law said, "You don't have to decide right away," which made me feel she hasn't given up. When I returned home, I asked Kevin, "This apartment is precious to us? Why are you deciding so easily to leave?" He looked surprised and responded, "Well, it's not a single-family home." I was a bit shocked by his reply. Perhaps because he grew up in a single-family home, an apartment doesn't feel like a real home to him. But I wish he could at least apologize for not understanding my feelings. Upset, I raised my voice. "It's my home, my apartment. Why are you deciding things without consulting me?" Kevin looked upset. "We've been married for 10 years. Why do you say my apartment? It's our apartment." His voice contained a hint of anger. I wished he could understand how I feel about this apartment as my cherished home. If he had hesitated to rent the apartment to his sister, I might not have felt hurt by his words "our place." But at that moment, I felt hurt. We tried to calmly discuss it many times after that, but it wasn't easy. Kevin seemed not to understand my feelings at all, and I got words like money-minded, stubborn, and selfish thrown at me. As time passed and the seasons changed, the wall between us remained unchanged. During that time, I kept receiving messages from my mother-in-law asking if the discussions about living together were progressing. The pressure from my mother-in-law and Kevin, who wouldn't understand my perspective, slowly wore me down. I felt I was reaching my breaking point. One day, I was shocked to receive an email from Sarah. It says, "Why are you two, without kids, hesitating to move out of such a small space? You don't need that big of a place. Just leave." I hadn't heard from Sarah since our discussions about the apartment, and yet here she was, out of the blue, telling me to leave. I never imagined I'd receive such a direct email. Reading that message, I reflected on how much I had endured and felt deep self-loathing. The idea of divorce crossed my mind several times. I tried to calm myself each time, but I felt like I was at my limit. I decided to go to the local government office to initiate divorce proceedings. I also decided to reach out to a specific place for the next steps. A few days later, with a renewed mindset, I visited the court. Upon checking, it turned out that both the apartment I lived in and the one I was renting out were all under my name. It was my apartment. Confirming this fact, I decided to confront my relationship with my husband and thought about what I should do next. I wanted to thoroughly discuss everything with him. I've told you many times, this is my house. I just can't stand the idea of renting this apartment to Sarah. I don't want to rent my home to someone who belittles and looks down on me. Please persuade your mother and Sarah, I said. Kevin's face darkened, looking like he was thinking this topic again. I had told Kevin about all the harassment I received from Sarah and how much I disliked her. I wanted him to understand my feelings. But the outcome was different. Kevin sided with Sarah, saying, Sarah is right. In hindsight, I could have gotten a divorce at that point, saving myself from this anguish. But I couldn't end a relationship that had lasted for 10 years so easily. If Kevin rejected my proposal, I was prepared to divorce. Deep down, I felt that way. Maybe you're just being overly sensitive about Sarah? Perhaps you feel she's being condescending, but maybe you're exaggerating things. I really don't understand why you feel this way, Kevin said, making light of my feelings without knowing the whole story. His words stung. Was I the only one feeling like this? If that's the case, will you sign this? I presented him with the divorce papers. A look of shock appeared in Kevin's eyes, but he immediately said, Do you really feel that way? You want to end our relationship over such a trivial matter? I'm serious. I care about Sarah too, and I always wanted to be with you. But recently, our relationship feels different. I don't feel the love anymore, so I'm leaving, I said while looking into his eyes. My heart ached at Kevin's attitude. His casual smile hinted that he didn't grasp the gravity of my feelings, and I felt a tear threatening to spill. I wished he would leave sooner rather than later. Maybe Sarah and your mother don't necessarily want to get along with you. Have you ever considered that because you always think about yourself? That's why our relationship is like this, Kevin said in a slightly softer tone. This is how we always were, misunderstanding each other even while trying to care for one another. Look, I think it might be impossible to fix our relationship, no matter how much we talk. I feel there's still a distance between our hearts. I can't even imagine a future with you anymore. If you won't respond to my feelings, then we'll have to take legal action, I explained slowly. Kevin, with a mix of surprise and sadness on his face, quivered. Do you really feel that way? Afterwards, he left the house without a word. He probably didn't want to talk anymore and just wanted to escape the situation. He hadn't signed the divorce papers, and he left his belongings behind. A few days later, Kevin returned. His eyes looked sad and somewhat wary. What should we do from here? He gently asked. He might think I'd forgive him if he humbled himself, but everything is already settled. There's nothing left to discuss. If you agree to the divorce, sign these documents. If you can't, then we'll have to seek legal action. And also, I'm letting go of this house, I said. Actually, I had been considering selling the house for some time. The day I went to get the documents, I had consulted with Mr. Thomas, an old friend of my father's. I've known him since I was a child. He was by my father's side until his last day. Mr. Thomas, who attended my father's funeral, gave me his business card and asked to be contacted if any problems arose. The card listed his law firm's details. With Mr. Thomas' introduction, I was fortunate to get assistance from a judicial scrivener regarding the inheritance my father left behind. When I told Mr. Thomas about my situation, he gave sincere advice. He informed me about the importance of verifying ownership, handling complications in divorce negotiations, and other helpful tips. Thanks to his advice, I could protect myself. After Kevin temporarily left the house, I decided to sell the apartment. I quickly reached out to real estate agents and informed them of my intentions to sell. I also informed Mr. Thomas about the deteriorating relationship with Kevin, his refusal to sign the divorce papers, and sought his support for the divorce procedures. When Kevin found out about the sale of the apartment, he reacted with both shock and anger. You always said this was our family home. Are you really planning to let go of such an important place? And after being so concerned about Sarah, you're truly selfish. But his words no longer unsettled me. Do you have anything else to say? I asked, looking him straight in the eyes, and took a deep breath. He was momentarily taken aback, but quickly began to assert his views. Why would you decide such an important matter on your own? The apartment might be in your name, but after a divorce, there should be a division of property. This apartment is the property of both of us who live here, right? Kevin became emotional and pleaded with desperation. In response, I gave him a slight smile and replied, "Actually, this apartment has been under my name even before we got married. I've already checked with my lawyer, and any property acquired before marriage is not subject to property division." Selling the apartment, of course, had its resistance, but I didn't want to leave behind more painful memories in this place. With the information about property division from Mr. Thomas, I decisively chose to sell. Kevin, upon learning the truth, suddenly changed his attitude. "I'm sorry. This place is special to you, but it hasn't been sold yet, right? Please reconsider. Why don't we give it another shot together? I'll explain things to Sarah and Mom. Please, just stop the divorce and the apartment sale." In his words, I questioned myself why I had stayed with him for 10 long years. I'm dumbfounded that I chose someone like him. Don't put on a nice face now. When we were together, you never once took my side, did you? Thinking of starting over with you now is unfathomable. So please, leave. We both need a fresh start. He wasn't easily convinced, creating a vast rift between us. But after navigating through various procedures, I finally managed to end our relationship. It's the beginning of a new life. The idea of being alone was initially daunting, but I realized it isn't as scary as it seemed. Now, I live in a new 2-bedroom apartment, living life on my terms. Don't worry, my mom is here, and even if you were gone, it would be fine. There's no problem at all. My husband coldly declared. The words were shocking to me, who had been sending $2,300 every month to my in-laws. Furthermore, my mother-in-law added insult to injury right there. "A wife who can't do proper housework is not needed," she said with a cold expression. She looked almost happy, as if she was expecting me to be thrown out. Realizing that it was futile to keep serving these people, I decided to leave. Then I answered calmly with a smile, "Really? If that's what you say, then I understand. I will leave." To this, my husband's cot exclaimed in surprise, "What? My name is Claire, a 32-year-old office worker. I met my husband, Scott, through a blind date arranged by a friend. He was bright and sociable, and we quickly got along, got married, and now it's our 5th year of marriage. We don't have any children yet. Scott had been living with his mother until we married, but upon marrying, we built a new house on his family's property. It was Scott's suggestion at the time of our marriage. Because I'm worried about my mom living alone, I want to be near her. But I also want our newlywed life to be just the two of us, so I think this is the best. But won't there be a mortgage for building the house? I wondered. The payments for the house can be fully covered with the inheritance left by my deceased father, so there's no need for a mortgage. The house will be in my name, and there's no cost for the land either. I think it's fine if we just repay in the form of monthly support for my mom. What do you think? Is that okay? Aren't you worried about your mother's livelihood? We'll be supporting her, and she has her part-time job income and her pension, so it's fine. Okay. That's reassuring. Furthermore, when Claire works late, she might help with the housework. That will be a help to you, right? Even though we would live in separate houses on the same property, I was filled with hope at the thought of enjoying our newlywed life and building our dream home. Moreover, getting support with housework during busy times seemed ideal. However, I would later bitterly realize how naive this thought was. The beginning of our marriage was bliss itself. We were both busy with work, but the housework wasn't much, and our new house was clean and easy to maintain. My mother-in-law was also busy with her part-time job and didn't come over too often. The regular support for my mother-in-law and shared living expenses were split between my husband and me. But one day, Scott brought up a new proposal. "I'll take care of all the household expenses, so can Claire make the regular transfers to my mom? I want you to transfer it to her bank account every month." What? How much will it be? Maybe about $1,500 per month? But upon recalculating, I realized that $1,500 was less than the previous amount, so I decided to secretly send $2,300 a month without telling Scott. The monthly $2,300 took up a large part of my salary, but other living expenses like utilities, groceries, medical bills, and clothing were significantly higher, so in reality, Scott bore the greater burden. Scott's salary went into a shared account from which I made the transfers, and the remaining amount was added to our savings. This method worked well for a year, but as my mother-in-law quit her part-time job and began to visit more frequently, things started to go awry. I'm getting old, so I decided to quit my job and rest. That's okay, Mom. You don't have to push yourself anymore. We're here for you. Thank you, Scott. You're always so kind. At first, it was a pleasant interaction between mother and son. But looking around the house, it seems you haven't been cleaning properly. Look, there's dust accumulating in every corner. This is something I can't overlook. I'm really sorry. I've been so busy with work recently that I haven't been able to keep up with the housework. That's just an excuse. You're living in Scott's house, so you should at least do the basic housework. And about cooking, I've heard you often take shortcuts. Is that true? I often prepare simple meals when I come home late from work, but I still try my best. Maybe it was a mistake to choose you as Scott's wife. After all these years off marriage, the fact that you still don't have children is also an issue. I think that the fact we don't have children may not necessarily be my fault, but arguing back would only lead to more conflict. Originally, the agreement was that my mother-in-law would help with household chores during tough times when we started living together on the same property. However, it seems both my husband, Scott, and my mother-in-law have forgotten that promise. Anyway, when my mother-in-law is around, her unpleasant attacks are constant. So, I've chosen to ignore them. Amidst such circumstances, a bigger problem befell me. The balance in our joint account was visibly dwindling. The cause of the problem was that Scott's salary hadn't been deposited for 3 months. What does it mean that your salary hasn't been deposited? I confronted him. Oh, about that. Scott began reluctantly, and what he said next was truly shocking. He had quit his job and was looking for a new one. I thought he was going to work every day, but he had actually been job hunting. Why did you quit your job? And it's terrible not to tell me something so important. Yeah, sorry. I really feel bad about it. My boss was very strict, never-ending nagging even for minor mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, right? According to him, a mistake he made caused the company a significant loss. Normally, such mistakes would warrant a warning from a boss, but he didn't seem to acknowledge his fault. I would be troubled if I were his boss. But since he has already quit, I felt we needed to discuss what to do next. Is there any prospect of finding a new job? The problem is, I can't find a company that matches my skills. At this stage, shouldn't you look for a company that will hire you even if the conditions are lower? We can't afford to be picky right now, can we? No, I want to choose carefully for my next job where I plan to stay until retirement. But what about our finances? You work too, so you can support us a bit, right? It seemed his opinion wouldn't change no matter what, so I decided to endure until he found a new job, but our household income had halved. After excluding the regular remittances to my in-laws, the amount left was meager, forcing us to dip into our savings. In reality, there's hardly anything left. So, I decided to increase my working hours to boost my income a bit. Fortunately, my workplace values my abilities and readily agreed to my overtime requests. However, when I returned home late, my mother-in-law was often lying in wait. Why has it come to this? I can't believe a daughter-in-law doesn't do any housework. I'm sorry, it's because of work. Making excuses and going out to play, and then telling Scott to give you more money? I need the money for living expenses and remittances. My salary alone is not enough. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law showed her anger. What? Complaining about just $2,300 remittance. Living in Scott's house for free and neglecting household chores. Unbelievable. Taking the amount of $2,300 lightly was incomprehensible to me. It's the money I earned with hard work. My mother-in-law seems to take the monthly remittances for granted and has lost sight of their value. Because you don't do the housework, I have to, or Scott suffers. It's tough because of such an incompetent daughter-in-law. Although my mother-in-law takes a domineering attitude, she often relies on ready-made meals from the supermarket and only does laundry for herself and Scott. The kitchen is left with used dishes lying around. Scott and my mother-in-law have their dinner prepared, but not for me. I'm usually told to eat whatever is left. Scott relaxes on the sofa in front of the TV and responsive even as I face harsh words from my mother-in-law. My affection for my husband gradually faded. His job search is not progressing at all. Scott, driven by his high pride, only aims for top-tier companies. A year has passed without him finding a job, and he just spends his days relaxing at home. Hey, if this continues, our savings will run out. Can't you do a part-time job to contribute a little to our household expenses? What? Part-time job? Scott glared at me sharply. This house isn't my name, it's mine. You're just living here and can't even take care of me properly, so it's only natural for you to pay the living expenses. The future looks very uncertain if things continue like this. I'm paying for our living expenses and the remittances to your mother, you know? There's a limit to how much I can earn. Remittances, it's just $2,300, right? Stop nagging. If you don't like it, leave my house. Saying that, he hit the table and left the room. My husband trivialized the amount I worked hard to earn, calling it a mere $2,300. Our marital relationship had never been more discordant. Amidst this, unexpected good news arrived. Scott had a chance to get a job at a company run by a friend of his mother. While the salary wasn't as high as his previous job, I was grateful he would be working at all. The trial period was set for 3 months. I don't think this company suits my abilities, but it's hard to say no since my mom introduced me. Scott said, as long as you're willing to work, that's fine. Do your best for the formal employment. I replied. However, I couldn't have imagined that his new job would lead to further problems. Scott left for work energetically every morning, but after a month, he started coming home late and sometimes didn't come home at all. His jacket smelled of an unknown woman's perfume. Furthermore, he didn't contribute his salary to our household and even started withdrawing money from our joint account without permission. While continuing the remittances to my mother-in-law, I decided to stop depositing money into the joint account. This made Scott furious, and he confronted me. Why aren't you putting money in the account? The balance is almost zero. Where is your salary going? You're not contributing to the living expenses. Tell me how you're using the money. I demanded. Shut up. I have friends to socialize with. You wouldn't understand. He retorted. That's not right. Am I the only one to earn and manage our livelihood? If you contribute money, I will too. I argued. This house is mine. It's only natural for you to contribute money. Scott insisted. I was appalled by his insistence that I should use my earnings for his pocket money and pay for the remittances to his mother and our living expenses. Moreover, I suspected he was having an affair. Though I had no proof at that time, I decided to investigate his suspicious behavior. I couldn't afford a private investigator, so I had to do it myself. While Scott was sound asleep, I decided to check his phone. He usually used fingerprint authentication. While he was asleep, I used his right-hand finger to unlock the phone, and it worked. Checking his phone, frequent exchanges with a woman named Kristen became apparent. The content was shocking. Really enjoyed our date today. Wish we could be together forever. Would you consider marrying me? I'll get rid of my wife. Wait for me. Can't wait to start our life in a new home. Such unbelievable conversations continued. I transferred important data to my own smartphone. After that, I headed to a specific location to find out who this Kristen was. One day, after returning home from work, I found many bags piled up at the entrance. What is all this? I've decided to live with my mom instead of you, who don't do housework. You decided to live together without consulting me? This is my house. You have no right to complain about my decisions. Since I'm paying for the remittances and living expenses, I should have a say. It's better with mom here, so you should leave. Scott coldly responded to my monthly remittances of $2,300 to his family. And my mother-in-law present also blamed me. A wife who doesn't do housework is useless, she said, smiling as if she hoped I would be driven out. Realizing it was futile to continue with these people, I made my decision. Then, I calmly replied with a smile. Really? All right, I'll leave this house. Really? Are you serious? But I'll make sure you pay for your infidelity. Infidelity? What are you talking about? Scott began to get flustered at my sudden accusation. You mean Kristen, the 27-year-old receptionist at your workplace, right? You're thinking of inviting her to this house instead of me? Don't be ridiculous. I can't entertain such baseless fantasies, but I do have proof. I counted. I showed him the screenshots of emails saved on my phone. I had gone to Scott's workplace to dig up information about Kristen and caught them entering a hotel secretly, capturing the moment in photos. Seeing this, Scott, realizing he had no way out, started making weak excuses. We've been arguing a lot lately, and I'm really stressed. Mom says she can't take it anymore with such a wife, but that doesn't justify infidelity. Why would you do such a thing? I had no choice. Kristen is the one for me, Scott declared. His words, enamored by a younger woman, filled me with disgust. The effort I had put in for such a man now seemed utterly futile. That's enough. In return, you'll pay the compensation for your infidelity. And I'll claim it from Kristen too. I don't have money. You know that, Scott said. Then work with Kristen to build a proper life. Your mom will help with the housework, right? Then there should be no problem, I retorted. My mother-in-law, unaware of Kristen's existence, was visibly shocked by this revelation. But she quickly regained her composure and sharply told me, a young and attractive woman like Kristen is more suitable for our family than a terrible wife like you. Leave Scott's house immediately. To her words, I calmly responded, then first, please sign this, and took out a divorce paper I had prepared from my bag, urging Scott to sign. Scott, confused, asked, when did you prepare this document? The day you told me to leave the house. I got it right after you said that, I quietly answered. Scott, surprised but ultimately, signed the document. I also signed the divorce paper on the spot and said, then, I'll submit this to the city office. Regarding my belongings, I'll arrange for a moving company to transfer them as soon as I find a new place. I added, I want you out as soon as possible. My mother-in-law yelled at me. That day, I packed the necessary items in a bag and headed to my parents' house. They were surprised by my sudden return but warmly welcomed me, understanding something from my expression. The next day, I took a few days off and started taking new actions. First, I submitted the divorce paper to the city office and then began looking for a lawyer for the divorce proceedings and compensation claims. I also started searching for a new place to live. It was a busy time, but I felt fulfilled, advancing my own life. My deepest wish was to have no further involvement with that in-law family. I found a stylish apartment suitable for a single person and asked a moving company to arrange the relocation. I returned home just for the day of the move. Scott was at work, but his mother was there. The movers took out my belongings, furniture, and appliances one by one. Are you taking everything? The house will be so empty. These are all things I bought. When we married, I used my savings to buy the furniture and appliances instead of you providing a house. If the house is registered in Scott's name, then these items are mine. My mother-in-law couldn't argue and was visibly frustrated. After moving to a luxury apartment, I started enjoying living alone. I could use all my income for myself. Thanks to working overtime, I got promoted and my salary increased. This lifestyle continued for about 3 months, and then I started receiving numerous calls from my mother-in-law. I regretted not blocking her, but finally gave in to her persistent calls. "Oh, Claire. Finally, I got through. What do you want? Please, can you come back? What? I thought you wanted me to leave? I'm sorry. I've reflected on it. I want you to send $2,300 to my account like before." How self-centered she was. According to her, Scott's workplace affair was exposed, and he couldn't secure regular employment, resorting to part-time jobs. Kristen and Scott had started living together, but she disliked living with his mother, who then returned to her old home. With no more remittances, she struggled to live on her pension alone. "I have nothing to do with you anymore. I refuse." I firmly declined and set my phone to reject her calls. I also blocked Scott's number, wanting no further involvement. However, a few days later, Scott ambushed me outside my workplace. "Claire, I'm sorry. Can we start over? I'm in trouble." I was perplexed seeing him bowing on the street. Scott said he tried living with Kristen, but she couldn't do housework. After the affair was discovered, he felt out of place at work and quit. Kristen, tired of their financially challenging life and constant quarrels, quickly left him. "It's too late. I have no intention of seeing you again. If you ambush me again, I'll call police." Wait, I ignored his shouting and hurried home. Later, through my lawyer, I received $30,000 in compensation and an additional $15,000 from Kristen. I heard Scott had resorted to borrowing money through dubious means and was now juggling several part-time jobs to pay off his debts. My mother-in-law had started working part-time again and was living frugally. They were at odds, blaming each other. After leaving the company and breaking up with Scott, Kristen was working night shifts to repay her debts. Meanwhile, I adopted a small dog in my new apartment and am enjoying peaceful, happy days, looking forward to my next wonderful encounter. Even though you've been freeloading unemployed for so long, you're so cocky. Get out. Don't think you can live this luxuriously forever. As I lifted my face from the laptop I had been working on at the dining table, a sharp pain shot through my neck. "Ouch, that's hot." I cried out, turning around to find my mocking mother-in-law holding a hair iron. I remembered she had been preparing to go out in the washroom earlier. Now, she was pressing that hair iron against my neck. So even a parasite like you feels heat. I was just testing how thick-skinned you are. You're completely useless, yet you live such a luxurious life. But I do work hard. Why are you treating me so terribly? You call that working? Staying at home and being lazy is not a job. It's about time you stop leeching off us. However, the real parasites were my husband and mother-in-law. I was the one paying the $5,000 rent, living expenses, and allowances for both of them. Despite that, I wondered why I had to endure such treatment. I've reached my limit. Leave this house immediately. Who knows what I might do next? Just to be clear, you really want me to leave? Once I go, I'll never come back to this place, you know? Yes, please do. I never want to take care of someone as poor as you again. I had become indifferent to such a home and family. Tears mixed with frustration and pain in my neck. I packed my belongings. Without looking back, I left my in-laws' house for good. My name is Kelly, 35 years old. It has been 2 years since I got married. Even before marriage, I had been working from home as a freelance writer. After graduating from college and working in a company, I had to quit and return to my parents' home when my father had an accident. I couldn't let my mother, who had difficulty walking, take care of my father alone. That's when I started looking for a job I could do from home. I began as a freelance writer with simple internet-related tasks. As my father recovered and I found more time, I gradually took on more work. It turned out I was quite suited for writing, and my income steadily increased. My articles were well received by readers, leading to direct contract offers. Before I knew it, I was earning more than I did as a company employee. During this time, I attended a reunion with my college circle friends. Hey, isn't that Kelly? Long time no see. Someone called out to me. There I met Ben again, who would later become my husband, 2 years my junior. In college, Ben was always the life of the party, known for his quick decision-making and energetic personality. After graduation, he worked for a renowned foreign company. We didn't interact much during college, but that day, we talked in depth for the first time. Perhaps because our personalities were so different, our conversation never ran dry. After meeting a few times, we naturally started dating. Hey, I really like foreign fashion accessories. My dream is to open a select shop that deals only with my favorites. In fact, I've already started preparing for it. For example, Ben shared his future dreams with me. I enjoyed listening to him. His mature intellect combined with a childlike curiosity made his stories seem achievable. Even a reserved person like me felt exhilarated just by listening, so I was genuinely happy when he proposed. A turning point came about a year after we got married. My father-in-law passed away suddenly. It was an unexpected death. Kelly, would you mind living with my mom for a while? My husband asked. Due to his father's job, his parents had been living in a luxury apartment for several years. But after his death, it was difficult to continue paying the high rent. Mom is still struggling to accept his sudden passing. She wants to stay there a bit longer, but the lease still has about a year left. Could we stay for that period? Indeed, it must be hard for your mother to move so soon after your father's passing. We can't leave her alone. Don't worry about the rent. Mom and I will cover it, but since it's expensive, could you help with the living expenses until my father's inheritance arrives? It's fine, no problem. It's a bit on the expensive side, but it's only for a year after all. Even though I had no interest in fashion or luxury goods, I was intrigued by what the interior of a luxury apartment might look like. At that time, I underestimated what it would be like to live with my mother-in-law. Little did I know, it was the beginning of my hardships. From the first meeting, it was clear my mother-in-law didn't like me. When we went to announce our marriage, she said, of all people, Ben had to choose an older woman. How did you seduce him? I felt looked down upon. Thankfully, my father-in-law intervened then, but now he was gone. From the day we started living together, my mother-in-law made her intentions clear. I still don't accept you as Ben's spouse. Hearing this, my spirit, already trying to support my tired mother-in-law, began to break. The next day, from my appearance to household chores, I continuously received petty complaints and sarcasm. Kelly, even if you're indoors, stop dressing so sloppily. Do you realize where you are? Always be ready for guests. Dress properly. Huh? This isn't my loungewear, though. What? That's not loungewear. Jeans are not acceptable. Wear a skirt at the very least. Always have your makeup done before breakfast. Is this the high-end lifestyle? I wondered, but obediently responded with yes. In the evening, did you buy these ingredients from that store? How can you make such a poor meal with ingredients from there? It was from a nearby luxury supermarket. I'm sorry, did it not suit your taste, Mary? It's just a simple salad. Ben likes it, so I often make it. But yes, that supermarket is quite expensive. My goodness, how embarrassing. Act in a way that doesn't bring shame to our family. You never know who's watching. She sighed deeply, shaking her head in disappointment. At that moment, I made a firm vow to myself. I would do everything in my power to be recognized by my mother-in-law. From grooming to cooking skills, I worked hard every day. However, her critical eyes never softened. Initially, I took her sarcasm and cold words lightly, but they gradually began to feel crushing. I felt invalidated, powerless. I wanted to confide in Ben, but our life together had changed. We used to enjoy our time as a couple daily, but since moving in, our opportunities to see each other had decreased. Sorry, I've been really busy with work lately. Hearing him say this tiredly, I felt unable to speak my mind. But being human, I have my limits. I felt the need to share my stress with Ben. Hey, I have something to discuss. Oh, I actually have something to talk to you about too. I quit my job 3 months ago. What? Quit? What do you mean? Don't worry, I've already started another job. Remember the select shop I always wanted to open? I finally launched it. I'm co-managing it with Senior Eric. What? You never mentioned any of this before. Senior Eric was a widely respected figure in our university circle, admired for his leadership and charisma. He had combined creativity and business sense, successfully developing and selling a game app in college and starting a startup with friends, showcasing his talents. I believe there's no doubt about his ability as a business partner. I had heard rumors of his recent success in web design. Ben, in his usual gentle tone but looking slightly guilty, said, "I didn't want to worry you or Mom. I'll work harder from now on. Will you support me?" I was moved by his words, yet hesitant. "I'll support you." But it was then Ben brought up an unexpected request. "Thanks. So, about the rent for this house, can you cover all of it?" I felt a mix of surprise and confusion. "What? But weren't you and your mother supposed to split the rent? It's impossible for me to pay it all by myself, especially since I'm already covering the living expenses." My heart was filled with anxiety. Ben looked at me earnestly and pleaded, "Please, Kelly. This has always been my dream. It's taking longer than expected to turn a profit. That's why I want to invest more in advertising. I'll definitely get this business on track before we leave here. I need your help to do that." Moved by his passion and earnestness, I couldn't refuse. I could afford the rent with my income, and fortunately, we had some savings. More importantly, I had never forgotten the day I chose to marry him, sharing and empathizing with his dreams and passion. "If you say so, I understand, but only until the lease on this rental ends. Also, I want to know more about the store you're running." "Of course, thank you, Kelly," Ben said and showed me the website of his select shop. I was impressed by its charm. "Is there anything I can help with?" I offered, but Ben firmly declined. "I want you to focus on your work. And please, don't tell my mother about this. I don't want to worry her unnecessarily." With this new development, thoughts of my mother-in-law completely left my mind. I wholeheartedly wanted to support Ben's business, but the amount I had to pay each month only increased. Gradually, managing the entire household budget, financially aiding my husband, and even giving an allowance to my mother-in-law became my responsibility. My only wish was for the rental contract to end quickly. "Kelly, could you put off your computer work for a bit and do some cleaning? Since you're staying here, you should be more proactive with the household chores," my mother-in-law said. I hurriedly replied, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mother. I'll start as soon as I finish this job." "This is your job. Enough excuses. Get it done quickly. We have guests coming this afternoon. After you're done cleaning, please leave the house." My relationship with my unaware mother-in-law remained unchanged over time. Since we started living together on days when she had guests, I always had to leave the house after finishing the cleaning. It seemed I was bothering her. Fortunately, I could work anywhere with my laptop, which was a small consolation. However, that day held a different outcome. When I returned home in the evening, my mother-in-law, looking satisfied, greeted me with "Welcome back. I tidied up your room." Confused, I rushed to my office. The room was indeed tidied, but rather, my belongings were organized. I don't own many things, but in the center of the room were a large suitcase and 2 duffel bags. "What does this mean, Mother?" I asked. "This room was initially prepared for guests. I can't accept someone with your lack of housekeeping skills using it. If you want to use this room, you'll have to pay an appropriate fee. If you don't like that, leave immediately. Don't expect to live luxuriously here for free," she declared. I swallowed my words. Why must I endure such treatment? As I silently bowed my head, my mother-in-law said with satisfaction, "I'll say it again. I don't accept you as Ben's wife." With that, she huffed and returned to the living room. Tears welled up in my eyes from frustration. I tried to contact Ben, but he didn't answer his phone. After I messaged him about the incident, he replied, "Please bear with it a little longer." Unable to contain my anger, I poured out everything to Ben when he returned late at night. "Just hold on a little longer. I'm stressed with work too." Don't worry about my mother, it's just a bit more endurance. He said, I'm paying the full rent, and now she wants me to pay for my room too. I can't tolerate her unreasonable demands any longer. I protested. After hearing this, Ben hurriedly tried to calm me. I'm really sorry. I'll talk to her. Once we leave here, you won't have to see her again. Please, just bear with it for a little while longer. He pleaded, soon, and then I'll never have to see her again. Ben's words slightly eased my anger. The next day, Ben seemed to be talking to his mother before he left. We had breakfast together, but there were no usual sarcastic remarks from my mother-in-law. Since my room was tidied up, I decided to continue working at the dining table. Are you leaving today? At my mother-in-law's words, I looked up from my computer. Instantly, I felt a sharp pain in my neck. Ouch, that's hot. I screamed, turning around to see my mother-in-law standing there with a smirk, holding a hair iron. What are you doing? I exclaimed. That was all I could say as I held my painful neck and rushed to get a cooling pack from the fridge. Thinking back, my mother-in-law had been getting ready to go out in the washroom earlier. She had used the hair iron she was holding against my neck. Oh, so you can feel the heat too. I wanted to see how thick-skinned you are. Living such a luxurious life, yet so useless. I work hard too. Why would you do something so terrible? Working? You're just using your at-home job as an excuse to slack off. Nothing but an unemployed person. It's about time you consider our situation and become independent, said my mother-in-law. In reality, I was the one bearing the rent and living expenses. Yet, I couldn't understand why I was being treated this way. Before I knew it, I was glaring at her. What's with that look? The look of a poor person. I've reached my limit. Leave this house immediately. Otherwise, I don't know what I'll do next. Am I really allowed to leave? I won't come back here ever again, you know? Yes, that's fine. I'm fed up with taking care of poor people like you. Filled with intense pain and disappointment, I cried as I packed my things. Since my mother-in-law had already organized my belongings the day before, it didn't take long. I no longer cared what happened to this house. I left my in-laws' home without looking back. After receiving treatment at the hospital, I went to my usual cafe to calm down. The spacious table arrangement and quiet environment were ideal for focusing on work. As I was contemplating whether to contact Ben, I was suddenly approached. Kelly, is that you? To my surprise, it was Senior Eric. It's been a while. How's Ben doing? Senior Eric, long time no see. Ben is in your care. I heard you were the co-owner. Sorry I couldn't greet you earlier, I replied as he furrowed his brow. Co-owner? What do you mean? I just helped with the website design on Ben's request. Really? I was shocked. He lied then. I heard you were the sponsor. Senior Eric said. I was surprised by this revelation. Ben had rented a different apartment and seemed to have worked hard for the first few months. However, he had others manage the inventory and shipping from the beginning. For the online shop's promotion, he didn't do it himself but paid for advertising services. I advised him to do it himself at first, but he insisted it wasn't the role of a businessman. He seemed too fixated on his ideal image of a business owner. As a result, there was no increase in foot traffic or sales, just mounting expenses. Despite this, he gave up too soon. According to Senior Eric, Ben is now deeply involved in internet business, paying high consultant fees. By the way, have you heard about your father-in-law's inheritance? There was quite a bit of debt, not as much as expected. But your mother-in-law is managing her share, so they're financially comfortable. Plus, he said with his wife's good income, even if he fails, they'll be fine. Really. But that funding is also running low. He's been living extravagantly, acting like a business owner, and sometimes treating his juniors. I was at a loss for words. The reason I had to cover my mother-in-law's allowance was that they had used up my father-in-law's inheritance. Ben's recent frequent requests for financial support were probably because his funds were running low. He hadn't told me about the inheritance, perhaps for that reason. Doubts connected with Senior Eric's words, and everything became clear. I got up unsteadily, thanked him, and left the cafe. Before I knew it, I was in front of my parents' house. Seeing me with my luggage, my father looked surprised. Tears overflowed as I saw the faces of my parents, who I had been holding back my sorrow from. "Tell us what happened. Your mom and I are always on your side. That's right? You always try too hard on your own." Their warm words made me cry again. Then, crying, I told my parents everything. Ben's secrets, the terrible treatment from my mother-in-law, and the fact that I was bearing all the expenses for my in-laws' house. My parents were both outraged and cried with me. "There's no need to go back to your in-laws' house. Live for yourself from now on," my father said. His words deeply resonated with me. After talking about everything, I felt a weight lifted from my heart. What have I been living for these past months? The only message from Ben was a short one asking, "Where are you now?" After that, I received several similar messages. After ignoring several similar messages, his attempts to contact me stopped altogether. To Ben, my existence must have been just that insignificant. More than sadness, I felt a firm resolve. Just having a meal with my parents, I could feel the warmth of a family. Maybe what I had been seeking was such simple moments of happiness. While staying at my parents' house, I gradually felt like I was regaining myself. About 2 weeks later, Ben called, probably because the rent payment was due. "Kelly, where are you? Have things calmed down with Mom? She feels bad about it. Aren't you coming back soon?" "I'm at my parents' house now. I plan to live here from now on. Your mother said she's tired of taking care of a poor person like me, and I'm not going back. Let's get a divorce." "Wait, why divorce? If living with Mom is the problem, let's talk it out. I'm coming to pick you up. Let's talk in person. Why should we talk now when there was no contact before? And how's your business?" After that question, there was a moment of silence. "Actually, I'm seeking advice from someone knowledgeable in business. There might be a big plan realized next month. That's it. Let's go look for a new place to live before that." Ben said, "Don't change the subject. You haven't told me anything important. That's why I don't want to talk anymore. I'll write the divorce papers and send them to you," I said and hung up the phone. However, that night, Ben suddenly appeared at my parents' house. I talked to him through the gap in the door with the chain on. "Kelly, please don't be mad. Let's go back. Mom feels bad about it. Come on, stop sulking." "Sulking? I was kicked out of the house by your mother. Don't take it seriously. Not take it seriously. Did you know why I left the house? Your mother pressed a hot hair iron against my neck and burned me. I don't know what else might happen, and there's no way I can go back." I brushed back my hair to show him the burn mark on my neck. "Did Mom really do that?" "I'm sorry, I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me?" "Mom told me it was just a simple fight. I'm really sorry. Are you okay?" "A simple fight?" His flippant words made my anger boil over. I had planned to decide on a divorce without facing him, but my indignation overflowed. I felt the same anger towards both my husband and mother-in-law. I thought of blaming them thoroughly. The outrage in my heart seemed to burn. "Anyway, I'm not coming back. You should go home too. I'll contact you again tomorrow." "Really? Will you actually contact me? I can't accept a divorce without even discussing it. If you don't contact me, I'll come back tomorrow." Ben said this and left. I prepared and arranged to meet with Ben and my mother-in-law 3 days later in the afternoon. The place for the discussion was a cafe restaurant on the 30th floor of a luxury hotel. On the day, I dressed in a high-end brand dress, revealing my neck and styling my hair up. My mother-in-law looked displeased at the sight of me. "Thank you for gathering today. I have reserved afternoon tea, so please enjoy it." I smiled at my mother-in-law and Ben. Ben seemed a bit relieved at my calm demeanor. Soon, tea and small appetizers were served at our table. Before we started eating, my mother-in-law began to speak to me. "Kelly, I'm truly sorry about last time. I was wrong." Ben scolded me harshly. "You'll forgive me, won't you?" I didn't respond immediately and quietly continued eating my appetizer. Then, I turned my neck to show the burn scar. "I can forgive you. Not until this scar fades." Also, are you aware that Ben quit his job? Ben shook in surprise. My mother-in-law looked at him in astonishment. What? What do you mean he quit? He's been saying he's busy every day. He's busy, right? Now he's an honorable businessman. Wait a minute. Ben panicked. What do you mean, businessman? Did you start your own business? Ben, explain yourself, as my mother-in-law interrogated him. I smiled contentedly while watching Ben struggle to make excuses. At that moment, the tea stand was brought to our table. I enjoyed the delicious-looking sweets while watching Ben and my mother-in-law argue. The view from the luxury apartment was great, but the view from this 30th floor cafe was also special. By the way, Ben, what have you been engrossed in lately? I heard from Senior Eric that you quit the select shop. Is that true? What? How did you? Ben lost color in his face, looking surprised and scared. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law tightly gripped his arm, confused and repeatedly asking, "What happened? Why would you do that?" I know everything. Ultimately, you were more obsessed with being a successful person than a businessman, right? Despite having no business sense, you just impulsively went ahead and ended up spending all the inheritance your father left, didn't you? Wait, Ben, what does she mean by that? You used up all the inheritance? Could it be? My mother-in-law's voice was full of suspicion and anger. Yes, exactly. Ben has used up all your inheritance as well, right? So our household finances are completely depleted because of Ben. Hey, stop. Don't talk anymore. Mom, don't worry. I'll find a solution. Ben was frantically trying to control the situation. My Ben I believed in betrayed me so much. My mother-in-law's voice was filled with despair, and she leaned back on the sofa in shock. Her expression was clouded with despair, and she seemed unable to say anything more. I continued speaking calmly while pretending to be unaware. Mary, actually, I have been covering all the expenses for the house. Even the allowance you thought Ben was giving you came from my wallet. In addition to that, I've been paying for Ben's expenses while he's been gallivanting around as a businessman. No way. How could that be? Don't worry, Mom. With Kelly's income, we'll manage. Ben's true intentions were revealed. Don't joke. I heard you're getting into another business. We're already at the bottom, spending money and just playing around. Stop it now. My words were a bit harsh, but in that situation, it couldn't be helped. The cafe fell silent, filled with a heavy atmosphere. I finished the tea left in my cup in one gulp and declared, I can no longer take care of you two who are now penniless. You will need to take care of next week's rent payment. And regarding the divorce, let's proceed formally through a lawyer. As I stood up, I took out the divorce papers from my bag and placed them on the table. Ben pleaded tearfully, I don't want a divorce. Please, don't do this. But my mind was already made up. My mother-in-law's face was trembling with paleness. Kelly, wait, I'm truly sorry. I had no idea. Without you, we can't survive. Kelly, help us. We're family. The word family coming out at this moment was unexpected, but it was too late. You said before that you didn't accept me as family, didn't you? Mary, as compensation for the burn, I would like you to start with this payment. I hope you still have this men's allowance. Saying that, I left the two of them in the hotel. Ben remained silent, ultimately saying nothing. Looking up at the high-rise floors from the ground, I hope they felt the sensation of being cast down from heaven to earth, marking the end of my revenge. Afterward, we got divorced. Ben resisted at first, but when I threatened to report my mother-in-law to the police, he quickly agreed. I thought I couldn't forgive my mother-in-law, but her disappearance from my sight would erase her from my memory. As long as they stay out of my life, that's enough. For that reason, I demanded a substantial amount from Ben for emotional distress. Later, they apparently moved to a cramped apartment. However, the relationship between my wasteful ex-husband and betrayed mother-in-law seems strained. Aiming for independence, my once arrogant mother-in-law is now reportedly doing part-time cleaning work. I couldn't help but laugh at the thought of that scene. Currently, Ben is struggling with debt and working multiple part-time jobs at night. It seems that working as an employee was more suited to his true nature. The active personality of Ben that I once found attractive was, from another angle, just impulsive and shallow foolishness. Living in the luxury apartment and the inheritance from my father-in-law must have revealed his flaws more clearly. I continue to work actively from my parents' home. I met with Senior Eric later and conveyed to him the details and my gratitude. He appreciated my writing skills, and now I am receiving work from him. For the time being, I plan to focus on living for myself with my parents.